The wind howled through the broken stones of the Tower of Joy as dawn seeped across the pale sky, turning the sands of Dorne from gray to rose. Ned Stark knelt beside the bed, where his sister lay, her dark hair plastered to sweat-slick temples, her skin nearly as pale as the linen beneath her. Outside, Howland Reed stood silent guard, his reed-thin frame dwarfed by the ruined towers. Inside, a handful of Dornish midwives lingered like timid sparrows, muttering prayers to the mother and the maiden. Lyanna's fingers tightened around Ned's wrist, the bones sharp beneath her damp flesh. "Promise me," she rasped, but there was no blue winter rose in her grasp now, only the rigid certainty of a secret that must not die with her breath. Her eyes, gray and fierce as any direwolf's, found his. "I can no longer keep him hidden. He is not mine alone." Ned felt the weight of grief swell inside his chest, a tide that threatened to drown reason. The babe, swaddled and red-cheeked, slept fitfully at Lyanna's side, unaware of the blood that still pooled beneath her hips. He was small, smaller even than Ned's own newborn Robb, but already his fists curled with a knight's resolve. Ned brushed a knuckle across the downy crest of dark hair. "Lyanna," he whispered, though his voice cracked, "you must rest. Save your strength." "There is no strength left." A tremor passed through her limbs, yet her gaze did not waver. "Listen, Eddard. Listen and swear by the old gods and the new that you will." "I will protect him," Ned said, though the oath tasted of ashes. He spoke it before he knew what shape her words would take, because he loved her, and because he feared what truth lay in her eyes. But Lyanna shook her head, a single stubborn denial. "No, Dot. Not only protect." She drew a ragged breath so deep her ribs shuddered. "Reveal him. When the time is right, when the realm teeters and truth may yet mend what war has sundered, tell them all that Jon is not my bastard, nor is he your get." Her fingers slipped, weak, but Ned caught her hand, clutching it between his own as if he could anchor her to the living. Outside, a kestrel shrieked, the lonely cry echoing against the stones. In the courtyard below, Sir Arthur Dayne's body lay shrouded beneath a cloak of Kingsguard white, crimson blooming where dawn had pierced his heart. Ned had slain the Sword of the Morning with Reed's help, yet the victory tasted of mud and sorrow. Rhaegar Targaryen's dream had ended here, amidst shattered stone and birthing blood. "He is the dragon's son," Lyanna murmured, and for a heartbeat Ned thought delirium held her, but her eyes were clear as lake ice. "Rhaegar's blood mine, our child." He named him Jaehaerys in our tongue, for the king who brought peace. "Call him Jon if you must, but promise me you will not let Robert's hatred erase him. Promise me you will tell the world when it can save more than it destroys." "Da." Ned's breath stilled. The words crashed through him like a falling wall. Rhaegar, Lyanna, Sundot Shan. The rebellion, Robert's war, all forged upon the certainty that Rhaegar had taken Lyanna by force. Yet here she lay, speaking of love, of a child conceived in choice, not in rape. If Ned carried this truth to Robert Baratheon, the rage of storms might turn upon the child, upon Ned himself, upon the fragile peace barely won. But if he buried it, he would soil honor with lies. A soft cry fluttered from the infant's throat, thin as winter wind. Ned lifted the babe, cradling him against the steel and mail that still stank of sweat and death. The child's eyes blinked open, gray speckled with violet, like dusk over the neck. In that gaze Ned saw Lyanna, fierce and free. He saw Rhaegar, all silver-voiced prophecy and doomed obsession. He saw the 1,000 blades that would rise if Robert learned another Targaryen yet breathed. Lyanna's hand fell to the coverlet, her breath a shallow whisper. "Tell Mother, I wanted to come home, to see the snow again." She tried to smile, but the tremor of her lips shattered Ned's composure. Tears burned, yet he forced himself to speak steady. "You will, Lya. You'll ride through the Wolf's Wood again. We'll hunt the Green Fork in spring. You'll teach Benjen that spear trick you love." But Lyanna only turned her face, seeking something beyond his reach. "Promise me." She breathed again, though her lips barely moved. Ned pressed his brow to hers and tasted salt and fever. "I promise." The tension in her fingers eased, the breath left her lungs, and with the hush that followed, the wind stilled as if the world paused to mourn a wolf maiden of Winterfell. Ned closed her eyes with trembling fingertips and placed the sleeping babe upon her still breast, letting mother and son share one silent heartbeat. Then he rose. 3 days later, the banners of House Stark rode north up the King's Road, while rumors like coiled vipers spread southward. At the head of the column, Ned kept the child close, swaddled against the chill of the early spring nights, yet word of an infant in the Stark retinue traveled faster than hoofbeats. At every end, the small folk whispered of a snow-skinned babe whose cries sounded like a direwolf's howl. Some called him Ned's own. Some claimed he was Lyanna's bastard. Ned offered no correction. Reed alone knew the truth and guarded it as fiercely as he had Ned's life at the tower. But secrets, like seeds, seek to sprout. In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon nursed victory and heartbreak in equal measure, his great voice booming across the ruined Red Keep. "Lyanna will be avenged," he roared to any who would listen. "The Dragonspawn are dead, the usurpers cast down." Cersei Lannister, newly wed, watched him with bright green eyes and growing contempt, while Lord Tywin plotted how best to bend the stag to the lion's will. It was at feast's end, amid spilled wine and torch smoke, that Varys the Spider whispered into Robert's half-deaf ear that Lord Eddard returned with a child of dubious birth. "A bastard, they say, your grace, conceived in sin under Rhaegar's shadow." Robert's hand tightened on his silver goblet until it bent like tin. He sent a raven northward on wings of vengeance. Winterfell loomed from the snowy horizon, gray towers rising like frozen giants above the white-capped pines. Ned crossed the drawbridge beneath the direwolf banner, half expecting old Nan's tales to howl from the battlements, but only Maester Luwin greeted him, his chain clinking softly. Catelyn descended the steps beside him, auburn hair a bright banner in the dimming light. She smiled, relief radiant, until she spied the bundle in Ned's arms. The questions in her eyes cut deeper than Robert's sword ever could. Ned found no words. He placed the babe in her arms. Jaehaerys opened his eyes and gazed upon the river woman who would shape his whole life in ways she could not yet fathom. "He is my blood," Ned said, granting the honesty Lyanna had demanded even as he cloaked the greater truth. "His mother is dead. He has no one else." "Menevsau." Catelyn's lips thinned, but she did not flinch. She studied the babe's strange eyes, winter gray marbled with amethyst. "What name?" "John," Ned answered, and whispered a silent apology to Lyanna for burying the dragon's name. Jaehaerys would rise later, when the world was ready. Catelyn nodded, though her fingers tensed upon the swaddling. "He will have a place in this hall," she said at last, formal courtesy masking cold confusion. "I will see to his wet nurse." Then she passed the child back and turned, skirts whispering over the stone like a departing ghost. Ned climbed the tower stairs alone, the promise he had sworn ringing in his skull like a hammer on an anvil. He thought of Robert's raven still winging its way north. If the king demanded to see the child, what then? Would Ned risk his sister's son to the mercy of a man whose love had curdled into hate? Or would he stand upon the high walls of Winterfell, a brother once more at war with the friend he had bled for? The answer lay frozen beneath his ribs. The raven arrived beneath a sky bruised purple with storm clouds. Ned read the parchment twice, though the words did not change. "Bring the babe south. I would look upon him with my own eyes." The ink, smudged by haste, bore Robert's unsteady hand. Ned felt the castle breathe uneasily around him. Catelyn sensed it too. That night she found Ned in the Godswood, beneath the weirwood whose bloody face watched across the pool. "You mean to take the boy?" she said, not as question, but verdict. Ned traced the carved tears of sap with a mailed thumb. Snowflakes settled in his hair like crowns of frost. "I must," he admitted. "If I refuse, Robert will wonder why. Wondering will breed doubt. Doubt will breed blades. In King's Landing, secrets are coins. Someone will sell ours for a song." "Band. Our?" Catelyn's voice trembled with something harsher than the wind. "He is not mine. Your sister's son or yours. It matters little to the Queen. To Lord Tywin. They will use him against you, against my own sons." Ned exhaled, steam swirling. "I would not put our children at risk, but Lyanna made me promise." Catelyn stepped forward, seizing his hand. "Promises can damn us, Eddard. Honor and love both. Break this vow, or you may break our house." She held his gaze, the starlight stark in her eyes. "Send a letter. Tell Robert you ride when winter passes. Delay, stall, beg mercy of time. The king loves you as a brother still. He will forgive one small falsehood." Ned thought of Robert's raucous laugh, the taste of victory ale beneath the Red Heart banner, the shattered bodies of Rhaegar's children in the ruins of Maegor's holdfast. The king's mercy was a sword that cut as it pleased. Yet so too could Ned's honor become a blade pressed against the throat of House Stark. He closed his eyes and heard Lyanna dying all over again. Tell them all, when it can save more than it destroys. The time was not now. The realm bled still. Robert's seat trembled beneath Lannister gold. Perhaps truth could wait, nestled like a wolf pup against winter's breast, until spring returned. "Very well," Ned said, tasting the bitter tang of compromise. "I will write Robert. The snow chokes the passes. A king cannot order the seasons." Catelyn's relief broke upon him like warm water, yet guilt rippled in its wake. He prayed to the old gods for guidance, but the weirwood wept only silence. Valyrian steel clanged against Baratheon warhammer, as the dream took Robert that night. In the vision, he stood once more upon the trident where Rhaegar's rubies danced in the shallows. Only now the Silver Prince rose from the water, unharmed, laughing. From behind Rhaegar stepped a boy, dark-haired, violet-eyed, whose smile mirrored both dragon and wolf. Robert swung his hammer but struck only river foam. He woke, sweat-drenched, roaring for wine. Varys perched in the doorway like a benevolent crow. "Disturbing dreams, your grace," he murmured, eyes gleaming. "I have word from the north. Eddard Stark claims heavy snows bar his travel." Robert wiped his brow. "Stubborn bastard loves his blizzards. Very well, let him wait. Winter will break before my patience." He laughed, yet something hollow echoed beneath. Lyanna's ghost haunted every cup he drank. If Ned withheld the babe, what truth lay swaddled in snow? The king signaled for more wine. He would bury questions beneath casks until the cold passed. Across the small council, Cersei Lannister's red lips curved. She penned secret letters to her father, to her twin. A Stark bastard in Winterfell could be lever or dagger both. In Winterfell, Jon Snow grew upon goat's milk and stories. Summer sun warmed the courtyards, and Robb toddled beside his half-brother, twin comets of laughter. Catelyn watched from ramparts, her heart torn between affection and resentment. Yet Joan's eyes held something of Lyanna's wild grace, that softened even her resolve at times, though never completely. Maester Luwin noted the boy's quick mind, the way he listened to ancient tales of the first men with grave fascination. At 3, he asked why the weirwood cried red tears. At 4, he demanded a wooden sword to spar with Robb. Ned granted it, and in the yard Sir Roderick watched the pair tumble like wolf cubs. Jon moved with uncanny balance, as though some shadow of the swordsinger's art thrummed in his blood. Ned saw Rhaegar in the tilt of the boy's chin, Lyanna in the proud set of his mouth, and fear in every imagined future. Each time a raven arrived from the south, his pulse stuttered. Yet Robert wrote less each year, lost to hunting, to jousts, to the honeyed poison of Cersei's arms. The silence became a cloak, heavy yet familiar. Ned almost believed it would never lift, until the day the yellow lion banners of Lannister rolled through Moat Cailin, with a royal decree sealed in golden wax. Lord Tywin's words were precise as any blade. The hand of the king had died suddenly. Rumors of foul play whispered beneath the Red Keep's vaults. Robert needed a man he trusted above all others. He commanded Eddard Stark to ride south and serve as hand. The parchment shook between Ned's fingers. Catelyn read it, blanching. "You cannot refuse." "I must," Ned said, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. Robert's summons could not be ignored. Beyond duty, there was friendship. And the realm itself. A Lannister queen advising a reckless king. Without a steady hand, war might fester. Yet to leave Winterfell was to leave Jon unguarded. Catelyn, sensing his thoughts, spoke softly. "The boy will be safe here. I swear it." And though doubt gnawed, Ned realized that trust was the bridge he must cross or burn. He knelt before her, placed his fate in her hands, and hoped the weight did not crush her. That night, Ned climbed the highest tower where Jon lay asleep, beneath a blanket of direwolf fur. Moonlight silvered the boy's lashes. Ned brushed a kiss upon his brow. "Be brave, my son," he whispered, and the word slipped free before he could snatch it back. Son, not in blood but in bond. Lyanna's last wish echoed through the chill air. Reveal him when it can mend what war has sundered. Ned prayed the wound of the realm had not festered too deep already. King's Landing seethed beneath late summer heat, the stench of the city washing over Ned like rot. He knelt before Robert in the throne room while courtiers watched with vulture eyes. Cersei's gaze cut like a whetted knife. Ned accepted the chain of office, its golden links cool yet suffocating around his throat. In the small council chamber, Varys smiled. "We have much to discuss, my lord. Funds, whispers, and bastards." Littlefinger smirked behind folded hands. Ned felt the court close around him like jaws. Letters from Winterfell arrived irregularly. Robb trained with steel now. Sansa dreamed of courtly life. Arya stole Jon's wooden sword and bruised Bran's knee. And Jon had found a direwolf pup in the snows, white as moonlit frost, eyes burning red. He named the creature Ghost. The symbolism clawed at Ned's chest. The North remembered, and the North waited. But in King's Landing, shadows lengthened. Jon Arryn's death bore the scent of poison, and Ned followed the trail into a nest of vipers. He discovered bastards of black hair and blue eyes scattered across Flea Bottom, children of Robert. But deeper still he unearthed a truth more fatal. The Queen's own offspring bore no trace of Baratheon blood. Golden hair told a tale treasonous. And yet, as Ned prepared to confront Robert, ravens from the east spoke of dragon banners unfurling over the narrow sea. Viserys Targaryen had wed his sister Daenerys to a horselord and called upon Dothraki's strength to reclaim his father's throne. Robert's hatred, banked but never extinguished, flared anew. At a council meeting drenched in sweat and venom, Robert slammed a gauntleted fist upon the table. "I will kill every dragon whelp that breathes. I should have slain Rhaegar's last brat when Ned cradled him in his arms." The chamber fell silent. Ned felt ice crawl up his spine. The king's gaze burned with ale-soaked fury, unfocused yet deadly. Cersei's lips parted, sensing a breach. Varys's powdery face betrayed a flicker of surprise. "What last brat?" Littlefinger asked, feigning innocence. Robert frowned, drunk on memory. The child Ned carried from Dorne. Lyanna's bastard. "So I thought." He laughed, a harsh bark. "But sometimes I wonder." His eyes cut to Ned. "Tell me true, old friend. Did you ever discover whose seed planted that wolf's pup?" Ned met the king's gaze. Years of secrecy, of promises made and buried, weighed like iron. He saw the heavy chain around his neck, the war drums across the sea, the golden-haired princes born of incest. He thought of Jon in Winterfell, sword in hand, ghost white wolf at his side, and he heard Lyanna's voice. "Reveal him when it can save more than it destroys." What could save the realm now? A boy of wolf and dragon blood, rightful heir to two great houses, untainted by Mad King's madness. Or would truth ignite wildfire in every corner of Westeros? Ned drew breath. "There is a story I must tell, Your Grace. One of love and honor, and of the son who carries both." Robert leaned back, suspicion warring with curiosity. Cersei's eyes narrowed, a lioness scenting danger. Varys steepled his fingers. Littlefinger's smile sharpened. "Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Hand of the King, rose from his seat and let the storm break. When dawn spilled through the Red Keep's stained glass, the corridors buzzed with rumor hotter than the dragon-forged walls. The Hand had spoken in the king's solar until the candles guttered to stubs. Guards at the door heard Robert's shouts, his sobs, the crash of wine flasks. By morning, no decree had yet emerged, but ravens were readied. Ned rode to the sept for vigil, lips set in grim line. Cersei struck first. As the Hand knelt before the statues of the seven, gold-cloaked men seized him, blades glinting. But Sir Barristan Selmy, bound by oath, and haunted by Targaryen ghosts, intercepted them. Steel rang in sacred silence. Selmy's blade flashed, and the first blood of a new conflict stained the marble. Across the city, bells tolled, calling lords and small folk alike to witness the storm brewing within the palace. Robert stumbled from his chambers, eyes red-rimmed, still clenching Ned's letter that named Jon Snow, Jaehaerys Targaryen Stark, the rightful prince. The king's council fractured. Some urged execution of the Hand for treason. Others begged investigation. By sunset, swords filled the streets. Ned's northern guard held the Hand's tourney grounds. Lannister crimson lined the gates. Storm's End men blocked the wharves, fearing Maester Pycelle's ravens might yet fly with secrets. In Winterfell, Jon practiced cuts beneath the weirwood, while ghosts circled, hackles raised at some unseen threat. Maester Luwin received a raven with black ribbons. Words danced across the parchment like ravens across snow. Ned Stark imprisoned, King's Landing in turmoil, truth of Jon's parentage unveiled. Catelyn gathered the children in the great hall, her heart a field of ravaged crops. She read Lyanna's confession in Ned's own hand, sealed months ago against ill chance. If this letter finds you, know that Jon is the blood of winter and summer, wolf and dragon both. Protect him, cat, for the realm may one day need the song of ice and fire. In the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, Ned knelt in chains while Varys glided through shadows. You have set a blaze none may quench, Lord Stark, the eunuch whispered. Cersei will not yield the Iron Throne to a northern boy, no matter his blood. And Robert, he is cracked iron, brittle and fierce. He may yet break. Ned's voice was hoarse. Truth must live, or we are all liars. Truth, Varys echoed, tasting the word like sour wine. Tell me, my lord, does truth win wars, or do swords and gold? Ned stared at the damp stone. Both, but truth gives swords purpose. Varys sighed. Purpose is a fragile sword indeed. Take care it does not break in Jon's hand. Above, thunder rolled across the sky as if the gods themselves contested Ned's vow. Ravens burst from the rookery, wings black against the dying light, bearing letters to every corner of Westeros. A prince lives in Winterfell, born of Rhaegar and Lyanna, shielded by the wolf's honor. In Highgarden, Mace Tyrell weighed alliances. In Sunspear, Princess Elias Kin mourned and hoped in one breath. In River Run, Hoster Tully spelled out dowry and banners. And across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen paused beside the Dothraki sea, reading the words Jaehaerys' lives, and her silver hair stirred in the hot wind. As dragons stirred in dreams, she had scarcely begun to dream. The next fortnight shaped itself into legend. Robert Baratheon, torn between love for Ned and fury at losing Lyanna's phantom to Rhaegar anew, challenged destiny with drink and hunting spears. Cersei marshaled Lannister power to seize Jon as hostage. Stannis Baratheon shouted for lawful succession and whispered of wildfire beneath the city. Renly gathered Tyrell roses to crown a more comely king. Inside his cell, Ned felt the world shift. He feared for Robb's young wrath, for Jon's uncertain claim, for the river of blood that might flow from a promise kept too soon. Yet he remembered Lyanna's eyes, clear and steadfast, and held the line against despair. On the 23rd day of his captivity, the king's guard escorted him to the throne room. There, Robert sat upon the Iron Throne, sweat beading his brow. Beside him stood Cersei, golden and cold. At their feet, a septon clutched a scroll. Robert's voice thundered across the hall. Eddard Stark, you stand accused of treason for concealing a dragon spawn. Yet also you stand as my sworn brother, a man of honor. Speak." "Shall this boy sit upon my throne after me, or shall I claim his head and end the line of the dragon forever?" A hush fell so deep that even breath seemed sacrilege. Ned's chains rattled as he knelt. "I speak only what is true. Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, wed in secret. The annulment of Rhaegar's first marriage lies in the records of Dornstall. The boy is legitimate, bound in prophecy and blood. If you kill him, you kill the hope of peace between dragon and wolf before it ever draws breath." "Nendo." Robert's face twisted, pain and rage at war. He rose, steps clanging against twisted iron swords. Cersei's hand shot out, fingers curling around his arm, nails biting flesh. "Enough," she hissed. "This farce ends now. Guards." But Sir Barristan stepped forward, white cloak billowing. "My oath is to the realm, to defend the innocent. I will not see a child murdered for politics." His sword slipped free with a whisper. Steel flashed. Lannister guards advanced. From the gallery doors burst Arya Stark with wooden practice sword stolen from the armory, and beside her, Sandor Clegane, burnt hound sniffing battle. Chaos unfurled. Robert bellowed, but the clash drowned him. Ned broke free of half-cut chains, seized a fallen blade, and fought to reach the dais where the Lion Queen shielded her cubs. Amid screams and ringing swords, the Iron Throne glimmered like a jagged maw awaiting fresh souls. Blood splashed against its steps, whose none could say. At last, Robert himself swung his warhammer, knocking foes aside. Silence fell in his wake. He stood over Cersei, whose green eyes blazed hate. Behind him, Ned panted, sword tip dripping. Robert looked to the corpse-littered hall. Good men dead for pride and fear. Then he looked beyond, to the narrow sea where dragons gathered, and to the north where a boy with eyes of frost and amethyst waited. "The realm bleeds," he muttered. "Sons against fathers, lions against wolves, dragons against all. I will not leave my people another Mad King's legacy." He turned to Ned. "Bring the boy," he commanded. "We shall foster him at Storm's End. Let him learn the ways of both storm and snow. When he is grown, the lords will decide his worth." Cersei screamed defiance, but Robert silenced her with a glance. The guards withdrew swords. The Septon wept. In that single decree, Robert cast the dice of fate anew. Autumn found Jon Snow riding south beneath banners of stag and direwolf. Ghost loped beside his horse, white fur bright against turning leaves. Ned watched from Winterfell's gate, heart torn between pride and dread. Robb raised a fist in farewell. Arya sobbed into Nymeria's scruff. Sansa clutched a doll of silk dragons. Jon looked back once, eyes bright. In them Ned saw hope, fragile, perilous, but alive. He remembered Lyanna's last breath. "Tell them when it can save." Perhaps the saving had begun. Far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen felt the first stirrings of life within dragon eggs, lain dormant for centuries, and she wondered at the name Jaehaerys, whispered by desert winds. In King's Landing, Varys penned new letters. "Purpose," he mused, "is indeed a fragile sword, but wielded with care, it can sever the chains of history." And in the halls of the old gods, where snow fell upon roots older than kings, the she-wolf's echo lingered. "Promise me." Ned Stark kept that promise still, though the world would bleed for it as surely as spring follows winter. The winds of fate swirled, drawing breath for greater storms. But for now, a boy rode between two destinies. Dragon's flame and wolf's howl, and the realm held its breath, awaiting the song his life would sing. The wind at Storm's End tasted of salt and thunder, as though the sea itself conspired with the sky to batter the ancient drum tower walls. Jon felt the vibrations thrumming through stone and marrow alike when he first crossed the causeway, Ghost padding at his stirrup, while Stormlander guards whispered of omens. They spoke in low voices of the white wolf pup with eyes like heartfire, of the boy whose blood wove wolf and dragon both, and of the king's half-mad hope that such mingling might bind a sundering realm. Yet to Jon, barely 9 and thin beneath borrowed mail, the fortress was less a legend than a test, and he measured it the way a wolf scents a clearing. Cautious, curious, unafraid. Lord Stannis Baratheon greeted them in the great hall beneath a rack of antlers longer than Jon's spear. Maester Treason stood beside him, frail and owl-eyed, while Lady Selise kept her mouth tight as a laced bodice, her daughters clustered behind like pale shadows. Only Shireen, blotched skin hidden beneath a hood, dared peek wide-eyed at Ghost, then flinched when the direwolf's red gaze met hers. "You'll have your own chamber in the East Wing," Stannis said without flourish, as if hosting the realm's most contentious child were no heavier a burden than sharpening a sword. "Sir Davos will oversee your martial training. Maester Treason your letters. You will eat with my household, pray with my household, and obey this household's rules." He paused, jaw clenching. "Do you understand?" Jon inclined his head, voice steady despite the hall's echoing hush. "Yes, my lord. Thank you." Stannis studied the boy with unreadable eyes, the color of the narrow sea in winter. He seemed weighed not by the boy's courtesy, but by the ledger of obligations and doubts that Jon's presence inscribed upon his soul. At last he nodded, dismissing the escort. As the tremor of footsteps faded, only the crackle of driftwood fires and the distant crash of waves lingered, and Jon sensed that from this moment the measure of his days would be taken against tempests, both without and within. Storm's End proved a stern tutor. Before dawn, Sir Davos Seaworth roused Jon for sword drills in the yard, where the salt air puckered leather grips and rusted ill-tended steel. Davos, weathered and soft-spoken, moved with a sailor's economy, each parry crisp, each correction precise as knots on rigging. Jon listened, absorbed, repeated. By midday he could feel his shoulder sockets grinding like millstones, but he refused to yield, memory of Robb's laughter at Winterfell spurring every counterstroke. Ghost prowled the curtain wall while Jon trained, unsettling garrison hounds who knew no scent like his. Rumor spread that the direwolf saw through human eyes, that he whispered secrets to the boy at dusk. Jon did nothing to encourage such tales, yet at night when he pressed forehead to Ghost's rough fur, he felt thoughts not entirely his own. The coastline mapped by smell, the taste of gull feathers, the electric thrill of distant lightning. In dreams he ran on 4 legs along the sea cliffs, his shadow vast in moonlight. Lessons with Maester Treason were quieter storms. The old man's voice quavered yet carried patient authority as he guided Jon through histories of faith militant uprisings, lineages of Stormlander lords, the properties of Kingsfoil and Willowbark. One afternoon, while copying Aegon the Conqueror's proclamations, Jon ventured a question lingering since Winterfell. "Maester, if 2 great houses unite by blood, does one claim extinguish the other?" Treason tapped feather to lip. "You mean, would dragon fire melt the direwolf? Heraldry is paint and parchment, my boy. What matters is who commands swords when the trumpets sound. But sometimes, symbols outlive armies. They become banners for folk who need reasons larger than hunger." Jon returned to scratching ink, yet the thought gnawed. If he ever bore a sigil, would it be wolf, dragon, or some chimera neither camp could claim? Across the realm, other storms gathered. King's Landing simmered under honey-thick heat, and the Iron Throne seated 2 sovereigns in practice if not in name. Robert stamped his boarskin boots across the city, thundering from tavern to tiltyard, trying to outpace grief and the web of plots tightening like a hangman's knot. The Queen spun threads of gold and crimson through court and council alike. Tywin's letters arrived daily, each line barbed with implication. Secure the boy, secure the throne. Ned Stark walked those same corridors beneath the weight of his chain of office, eyes and heart fixed northward. He pictured Jon pale and solitary in some drafty tower, and prayed the Baratheon's sense of honor, or what remained of it, would shield the boy from Cersei's reach. Yet one night, Ser Barristan brought word that a gold-cloaked courier had sailed under false colors toward Weeping Town, the nearest port to Storm's End. Ned's pulse thundered like hooves on hard ground. He found Robert in the throne room, wine flushed and triumphant after a day's melee. "You promised the boy would be safe," Ned said, voice low. "If you send Lannister knives after him, the promise breaks. And so does our friendship." Robert blinked, confusion sliding into anger. "Knives? I sent no such order." "Them too. But someone speaking with your seal did." Ned handed him a chipped wax impression harvested from the informer. "Even a thick king can smell Lannister perfume on this lie." Robert's knuckles whitened around the parchment. "By the 7, I'll gut the next lion that roars in my hall." His thunder carried sincerity, but Ned knew sincerity rarely outlived wine. The next dawn, Robert announced a fresh boar hunt west of the city. At his elbow, Jaime Lannister smiled and pledged to ride close, a shadow in gilded mail. Ned begged Robert to delay, but the king only laughed, slapped Ned's shoulder, and promised fresh pork for the small council's supper. The smell of danger lingered like rot beneath roses. At Storm's End, thunderclouds marched in towering ranks across the sky. The castle's drum tower shook with each peal as though giants punched the walls. During evening meal in the cavernous feasting hall, Sir Davos strode to Lord Stannis Dace and murmured urgent words. Stannis' granite visage darkened further. He rose, armored breastplate gleaming in candlelight. "Jon," he said, voice carrying. "Come." Jon set wooden trenchers aside and followed Stannis, ghost-pale Shireen trailing behind like a wary moon. They climbed a spiral where arrow slits bled rain. At the tower's apex waited a prisoner bound to a chair, ragged, soaked, smelling of bilge and fear. 2 guards flanked him, dripping swords. "We pulled him from a fishing skiff skulking under our rocks," Davos said. "Claimed to bring gifts from the king." Stannis flicked rain from gauntlet. "Name yourself." The man's eyes darted. "Harbin Swift, my lord. Silk merchant out of Lannisport." "A lion cub in smuggler rags," Stannis said. "What cargo?" Harbin swallowed. "Delicacies for the boy, lord. Dried figs, Dornish sweets." Stannis nodded to a guard who upended a satchel. Bronze vials clattered across flagstones, familiar to any healer. "Viper's blood? Tears of Lys? Basilisk venom?" Maester Cresson hissed beside Jon. "Even..." Shireen recoiled. Stannis' voice fell cold as wave spray in winter. "Poisoned figs, for a 9-year-old child." Signed by a hand, bearing the king's great seal. He held up a parchment mottled with sea stains but unmistakable wax. "Either Robert Baratheon issues orders counter to my own word, or foul impostors strike from King's Landing." Harbin quaked. "I only ferried the satchel. A lady gave it me. One red of hair, green of eye." "Sailor's lies," Davos muttered, but Jon saw truth shimmer in the man's terror. Cersei had minted a coin of Robert's visage and spent it freely. Stannis stood silent so long the storm seemed to hush for his verdict. Then he drew Lightbringer, the ancestral greatsword. Simple steel, not R'hllor's fiery blade of legend, and severed lies from life with a single stroke. Harbin's head rolled, eyes wide as black pearls. Jon flinched but held gaze. Ghost's low growl answered the shock. "Clean the mess," Stannis said, and turned to Jon. "A king's blood draws more leeches than a swamp. This changes everything." Jon's mouth felt full of iron. "Will she try again?" "She will," Stannis said. "So we sharpen every sword and every mind." His stare cut deeper than the blade. "Are you afraid?" Jon met his eyes. "Yes. But ghost stories say fear cuts deeper than swords. I would rather wield the blade." "You and I'll." Stannis' lips twitched, almost a smile. "We shall see." 3 days later, a raven arrived at dawn, its feathers sodden. It bore 2 messages. Robert had gone boar hunting in the Kingswood. Robert lay dying of gut wounds and fevered poison. Ned Stark's swift reply ordered Stannis to hold the boy until more ravens explained whether the king yet breathed. But ravens rarely best riders, and word spread on wind. If Robert died, the realm would fracture along lines drawn by secrets. Maester Cresson gathered lords of the Stormlands in the Tor audience chamber. Stout penrows of parchments, blustering Errol of Haystack, grim Selmy cousins, Estermont uncles. Stannis addressed them beneath the hurricane of uncertain kings. "If my brother lives, we defend his will," he declared. "If he dies, we defend law. But law cannot outshout rumor. Thus, I charge you. Ready, Garrons, send staunch men to every holdfast with letters bearing my seal and Cressen's hand. The boy called Jon Snow is under my protection by the king's own decree. Any who harm him harm the realm." Penrose bowed. "What of the queen, my lord?" "She has men and gold aplenty." Stannis' jaw flexed. "Shall soon wish she possessed truth as well." The assembly dispersed into wind-lashed courtyards. From a window Jon watched riders thunder out, cloaks snapping like war banners. Ghost pressed against his leg. An unease settled heavier than mailed hauberk. His safety now pivoted upon unseen struggles in a city far away, where queens' whispers moved quicker than ravens, and every drop of blood spilled might roll back toward him. That night, he dreamed of the crypts of Winterfell. He walked torchless down those damp stairs, ghosts' paw pads silent on stone. At the end, a door of black iron opened into summer fields, blazing with dragonfire. Lyanna Stark waited there beneath a weirwood in bloom, petals swirling like snow in sunlight. She touched his cheek, whispered words he could not decipher, and pressed a blue winter rose into his hand. When he woke, the scent of frost and fire lingered. King's Landing reeled. Robert lingered 2 days before his body failed, fever-boiling veins already thick with ale. In delirium he babbled of Lyanna, of Rhaegar's rubies, of a babe with wolf's eyes in Ned's arms. Cersei sequestered herself with her children, the metalsmith forging fresh chains for city gates. But death, once loosed, pried doors Cersei could not bolt. Ned convened the small council within the great sept's echoing nave, where the king's bier lay draped in stag banners. Ser Barristan stood vigil over the body. Pycelle dabbed tears. Littlefinger smirked like a cat in the cream. Ned produced Robert's final sealed directive, ink splotched yet unwitnessed by the queen, naming Lord Eddard protector of the realm until Prince John of House Targaryen Stark, issue of my beloved Lyanna, shall come of age. Gasps rippled. Pycelle croaked about legitimacy. Varys's brows soared. Littlefinger assessed angles. Then the doors crashed open, and armed Lannister guards poured in, crimson cloaks blooming in candlelight. Cersei entered with Jaime at her flank, her smile carved from emerald ice. "I thank the council for gathering," she said. "The king is dead. Gods preserve his soul. His Grace Joffrey, first of his name, bids Lord Stark surrender the office of protector and kneel." "No." Ned raised the parchment. "Your son is no Baratheon. The realm knows your infamy." Cersei's gaze flicked to Varys, who remained sphinx-like, then to Pycelle, who offered her a quivering nod. She lifted a rolled scroll bearing the royal seal. "Here lies Robert's corrected will, witnessed by Grand Maester and hand both." She smiled thinly. "And I believe the gold cloaks of the city will confirm which document they uphold." Littlefinger's hand slipped from sleeve to dagger pommel, hesitated, then withdrew. 1,000 swords hung upon that hesitation. Ned's personal guard drew steel, but they were few against the flood of red and gold. Steel whispered from scabbards like snakes rousing to strike. Ser Barristan stepped forward, white cloak stirring. "My oath is to the rightful king." "Who claims that title?" Ned met his eye. "Prince John." Cersei raised a hand, and a crossbow bolt hissed. It shattered beside Ned's boot, sparks skittering across marble. "Seize the traitor." Chaos erupted, blades clanging, small folk screaming, the bier tipping to spill Robert's corpse upon the floor like a grotesque spectator to his kingdom's collapse. Jaime's sword flashed, felling Stark retainers. Barristan fought 2 red cloaks at once, white cloaks streaked with crimson. Ned parried a halberd, pushed through swirling bodies toward the exit, where more gold cloaks waited uncertain which banner to obey. Littlefinger slid behind him. "Better to yield, my lord," he murmured, dagger whispering against Ned's ribs. "Life to fight cleverer." Ned spun, eyes blazing. "I will not yield John's life to lions." He slammed Littlefinger's wrist, sent the dagger spinning. Barristan reached his side, Together they cut a path through wavering cloaks until they emerged onto the sept steps under a sky bronze with dusk. Bells tolled for the departed king, clashing with the screams of the living. Outside the gate, Arya Stark, wild hair, dirt-smeared face, brandished a training sword at 3 city watchmen, Nymeria snarling. Ned's heart lurched. His daughter should have been safe in Maegor's holdfast, but chaos had spilled her onto streets now running with blood. Barristan lifted Arya onto his horse. "We ride to the river gate," he said. "Your Grace." He halted, for he did not know what title to give. "Lord Stark, protect the girl." Above the Red Keep loomed dragonstone walls turned red by sunset, as though the fortress itself bled for old wrongs. Ned mounted behind Barristan, and the 4 of them, Ned, Barristan, Arya, Nymeria, galloped into the narrow streets, leaving King and Queen, Lion and Spider, to carve fresh betrayals from Robert's cooling bones. Ravens leapt from Eyrie and River Run, from Dragonstone and Highgarden. War songs rode their wings. Robb Stark, not yet 15, read his father's desperate plea beneath Winterfell's weirwood: raise the banners, march south to break the lion's stranglehold before they seize the wolf pup in Storm's End. Catelyn held the letter, tears tracing lines already worn by earlier fears. Yet when she reached her chambers, she found Jon's second secret letter still sealed. "If I fall, reveal all, protect our family. Burn unread if I live." She pressed it to her heart, uncertain which prayer to speak. Robb called the great Jon. Serwyn, Glover, Mormont taught. The north stirred like a bear in spring, slow but unstoppable. Beside Robb rode Theon Greyjoy, eager for war's glory. Behind marched a she-soldier with great axe, Daisy Mormont, who swore to keep the young lord's head upon his shoulders. Along the neck, Howland Reed's crannogmen sabotaged bridges to delay Lannister outriders. Word spread that the old magic of the marsh stirred for Lyanna's son. Nights there glowed with foxfire and the screeches of swamp dragons no maester could name. At Storm's End, Stannis received Ned's raven. He read it twice, lips grim, then summoned Sir Davos and the Stormlords. "The lions have struck," he said. "The north marches. We are cut from allies by leagues of foes." He looked at Jon, whetstone eyes softening a fraction. "If they seize you, the realm shatters. If we hide you, they still war. Only one course remains. Meet war on the field with law in hand. Then thou all." He unrolled Robert's original directive, signed by the king's own hand and affixed with his ring. The queen forged a lie, but lies melt before steel, if steel is held by men of honor who will not bend. Penrose frowned. "Your lordship means to fight?" Stannis nodded. "I march north to join Eddard Stark. Davos will command our fleet to harry the coast, deny Lannister ships. The boy rides with me." Lady Celeste gasped. "Our household will become lion feast." "Our household will become legend," Stannis said, cutting her plea. He knelt before Jon, catching the boy's eyes in stern vice. "From this hour you are no ward but my squire. You will stand beside me in parley and in battle. When men question your right to breathe, you will answer with blade and truth in equal measure. Do you accept?" Jon's throat tightened, yet he thought of Winterfell Godswood, of Lyanna's ghost, of Ned's promise, and Robert's hope. "I accept, my lord," he said. "I will be brave." Stannis rose. "Then sharpen your courage. We march at dawn." "Then no." They rode out beneath banners of the crowned stag and the direwolf stitched beneath, a new device quickly wrought by Cressen's quaking hands. Lightning danced over the bay, and thunder drummed approval as hooves pounded the causeway. Shireen waved bravely from the gatehouse, clutching Ghost's sleek head. The direwolf refused to leave Jon, but the boy insisted he remain, fearing archers' bolts on open road. Ghost's howl followed them into the rain, a promise he would find his pack again. The column wound through storm-soaked fields where small folk pressed dirt-streaked cheeks to ground at sight of Stannis. None loved him, but his grim sense of justice radiated like forged iron. When Jon rode past, whispers chased him. "That's the dragon wolf, boy to break the realm." Jon kept his gaze ahead, knuckles white on reins. At Bitterbridge they found blockade. 3 companies under Sir Adam Marbrand, lions on red cloaks snapping wetly. Marbrand hailed Stannis across muddied meadow. "Storm's End rebels against the crown," he called. "Surrender the traitor boy, and we let your men pass unmolested to their homes." Stannis wheeled his charger forward. "I obey only lawful crown, sir. A crown forged not of gold but oaths. My brother named this boy prince, and my honor protects him." "Stand aside." Marbrand's laugh carried no malice, merely inevitability. Banners dipped, arrows knocked. Stannis raised his sword. Jon drew the short blade Davos had gifted him, heart hammering. On the first charge, thunder drowned screams. Jon kept close to Stannis, parrying a rider's mace that glanced off his pauldron, sending numbing shock through his arm. Rain blurred vision. Hooves churned earth to blood mud. He saw Stannis cut Marbrand's banner, lightning framing every downward stroke. Amid the melee, a Lannister knight bore down on Jon, lion helm snarling. Jon's sword, too light, barely turned the first blow. He tasted iron, not from steel, but from split lip. Instinct flared. He pivoted beneath the next swing and drove his blade upward into the knight's armpit where chain parted. As man and lion toppled, Jon stumbled clear, lungs flaming, mind scalded by first kill. He would have vomited but for Stannis' voice above the din. "Well struck, boy. Form on me." They broke the Lannister center, drove them to the riverbank where armored lions floundered in floodwaters. Those who tried for the squire found Stannis' shield barring the path. Those who sought retreat found Davos' rearguard closing. In an hour it was over. Marbrand captured, his survivors disarmed. Stannis neither exulted nor gloated. He counted his dead, burned the worst wounded to spare infection, and rode on before second nightfall. Jon slept that evening wrapped in damp cloak beneath a willow rain-pattering lullaby on leaves. In dreams he walked ghost-foot through Bitterbridge camp, smelled blood and oatcakes calmingly, tasted victory laced with wormwood regrets. When he woke before dawn, fingers still tingled where his blade had pierced man's flesh. The sky was clearer, stars brittle as cut glass. He whispered thanks, though to which gods he could not say. Far to the northeast, Robb Stark crossed the twins after forging an uneasy pact with Lord Walder. The bannermen cheered the young wolf, but ravens from King's Landing chilled war-warm hearts. Eddard Stark had fled the capital, whereabouts unknown. Rumors claimed he rode with the last true Kingsguard. Others insisted Lannister heads spiked the walls. Each tale added tinder to anger. In River Run, great council convened. Blackfish Tully urged immediate strike at Harrenhal. Galbart Glover argued for march on King's Landing. Catelyn, gaunt with fear, listened and spoke of the fragile boy south of Gullet, whose life might tip scales none yet measured. She produced Ned's sealed letter, unopened, for the hand still lived. Robb watched wax melt in candle flame. Saw his mother's face as she read. Saw her hand tremble just once before voice steadied. "Your father commands, the boy lives, and with him, chance for lasting peace. Protect him at all cost, so declare." That night the Riverlords raised a cheer. The North remembers. But Catelyn heard undertones. Not all cheered for the Dragonwolf Prince. Some feared old Targaryen ghosts, others despised southern entanglements. War makes allies of convenience, until victory sets them slitting throats over spoils. In Dragonstone's shadowed halls, Stannis' younger brother Renly preened in green velvet. Tyrell roses scented his hair. Word of Robert's death reached him as he cavorted with Loras Tyrell among ship lanterns. Renly poured wine, declared himself the better Baratheon. Young, charming, beloved. Highgarden's knights roared approval. But when ravens revealed Jon's claim backed by Stannis and Ned Stark, Renly's laughter faltered. A prince with dragon lore would draw eyes away from oiled curls and honeyed smiles. He dispatched envoys to Storm's End promising alliance if Stannis would cede claim. In return, Renly offered pardon, title, Tyrell swords, even high garden gold. Stannis burned the letters unread. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen felt life quicken in her womb, and in 3 stone eggs warming nightly by embers. She traced scales with fingertips as Illyrio's courier told of Lyanna's son alive, rightful heir by some Westerosi reckoning. Rhaegar's boy, cousin to her unborn child. In Daenerys' mind, the comet she believed only she had seen now gained second purpose, to guide 2 dragons home. Khal Drogo scoffed at talk of Iron Thrones. He would win the world for their son, not for some pale wolfling. Yet Jorah Mormont, exiled bear of the North, watched Daenerys' thoughtful silence and wondered whether a united Targaryen front might shatter the usurper's chaos better than scattered Khalasars ever could. Ned Stark and Ser Barristan sheltered 3 nights in the burned sept of Sow's Horn, waiting for word from Riverland's scouts. Arya, disguised in boy's garb, practiced water dancing with a stick blade. Nymeria hunted hares in frost-crusted fields. Ned feared every raven, yet one bearing direwolf seal finally found him. Stannis marching north with the boy, Robb crossing Trident. Paths converging like blades into scabbard or throat. Too many armies, too little trust. Barristan warned. The boy is Tinder. We must reach him before sparks. Ned nodded. Ride at dawn. They skirted Lannister patrols, sleeping in hedges, eating cold oats. Ned's dreams were fevered with Lyanna's dying words, Robert's last smile, Joan's infant fist curling round his thumb. When dawn of the 7th day cast rose gold across hills, they sighted Stannis' banners on ridge above Kingsroad. Between columns of spearmen trudged the boy in dusty surcoat, mud-spattered but unbroken. At his side rode Davos and Maester Cresson. Ned felt breath leave him in a single sigh. He spurred forward, Barristan flanking. Guards raised pikes until Davos recognized Stark Grey. Then cheers erupted. Northmen and Stormlanders at last meeting upon common field. Jon swung from saddle before Ned could dismount. For a heartbeat they stood, the man who had carried him from blood-soaked tower, and the boy who carried hope of towers yet unbuilt. They embraced while soldiers looked on, some with tears, some with wary calculation. Stannis regarded the reunion, arms folded. "We march for River Run to join your son," he told Ned. "Together, we may strike the lions from both flanks." Ned straightened. "First, we rescue my daughters still trapped in Red Keep." Stannis' jaw tightened. "A king's ransom and maiden hostages." "Not ransom," Ned said. "Justice." Barristan bowed. "I will accompany Lord Stark. My white cloak is sullied serving false heirs. Let it serve truth in redemption." Stannis considered, then extended hand. "Then ride swift. My host turns east at Maidenpool. If you free the girls, bring them there and we advance south together." Plans laid, camps merged. That night Ned and Jon sat by small fire outside command tent. Arya listened, head on Nymeria's flank, eyes bright as stars. "I killed a man, father," Jon said quietly. "A knight who meant to kill me." Ned's gaze did not waver. "And how do you feel?" Jon searched flames. "Cold, then frightened. Now, only awake as if snow melted from my eyes." Ned placed a hand on his shoulder. "The first life taken marks you, but does not define you. Lyanna wished you to live in truth. Sometimes, truth is won with steel, sometimes with mercy. Remember which blade to draw." Jon nodded. Across camp. Horns sounded shift change. The moon climbed, its light silvering ghosts pelt where the direwolf lounged at boundary of torchlight. Jon followed the wolf's gaze eastward and felt a tug, not of fear but of fate. Somewhere beyond that dark horizon fire waited. He wondered whether dragons felt cold before they breathed flame. Morning's banners unfurled to reveal a sigil newly stitched by camp seamstresses. A direwolf rampant within a fiery sunburst, silver on midnight blue. Soldiers dubbed it the Sigil of Dawn's Promise, though maesters kept scratching for a proper name. Jon studied it where it flapped beside the crowned stag and the gray direwolf of House Stark. Identity, like prophecy, sometimes arrive not by claim, but by need. Robb's host met them near Derry, steel glinting like a river in flood. The reunion of father and son was brief. War claims long embraces. But Robb's gaze lingered upon Jon, awed and uncertain. Once brothers by hearth, now pawns of crowns. They clasped forearms. Warmth flowed like summer. Nightfall turned the combined camp into a festival of strategy. Riverlords arguing ford crossings, stormlords sighting supply lines, Northmen trading cloaks for ale. Amid this swirl, Ned convened council. Strike west to cut Lannister supply at Harrenhal, or march straight south to capital. The fate of his daughters urged speed. The caution of Stannis and Robb urged prudence. Jon listened at map's edge, memorized terrain and tactics. When silence fell, he spoke, voice steady. Harrenhal sits upon the river like a leech. Cut it off, and lions starve. March south after, with prisoners freed and riverlands secure. Lords exchanged glances. Some incredulous a boy spoke, others nodding at clarity untarnished by ego. Stannis' eyebrow rose, but he offered no rebuke. Ned smiled faintly, pride warming chill heart. Decision sealed. Stannis led vanguard west, Ned and Robb north of the God's Eye, Davos commanding fleet up Blackwater to choke Royal Harbor. Barristan departed under moonlight, with small band, to infiltrate capital. War drums rolled. The song Lyanna had foretold began to swell, neither wolf's howl nor dragon's roar alone, but the distant harmonies of both interwoven. In that uncertain cadence, the realm heard possibility. Ruin or renewal, ice or fire, or a song where opposite elements entwined to forge something stronger than either. In King's Landing, Cersei crowned Joffrey before what remained of the court, lion banners obscuring Stag. The boy king butchered protocol, hacking at Eddard Stark's effigy, denouncing traitors north and south. No sooner had the crown settled on his golden curls than reports arrived of united Stark Baratheon forces routing Ser Adam. Of Storm's End banners fused to Direwolf. Cersei felt walls closing. She dispatched ravens to the twins promising lordships, to Old Town offering sept rebuilding, to High Garden sweet berries of alliance, to Pike iron promises of salt and stone. Each letter bled gold, like a wounded stag. Varys listened, filed every plea in mind's labyrinth, and wondered whether the realm might yet survive its would-be saviors. On the field before Harrenhal, the united host arrayed beneath morning mist. From the battlements, Sir Gregor Clegane surveyed the rebel army and spat. Beside him, Tywin Lannister weighed options. Hold castle, await reinforcements, or sally forth and crush young wolves before siege lines tightened. But when scouts delivered news of Storm's End spearmen at their rear and Davos ships blockading Pendrick Cross, Tywin's lips thinned. Pincers closed faster than gold could bribe. He ordered midnight evacuation, fires set to food stores. Yet dragons once melted Harrenhal's towers. No flame he kindled matched that ruin. At dawn, Stannis' vanguard stormed gate, found only ashes and stray swords. Jon rode through corpse-scented halls, where legends of cursed castles whispered. He felt walls pressing memories of Aegon, of Rhaegar's dreams. In the grand yard, he picked up a lance blackened by heat centuries old, and for a moment imagined fire dancing at its tip. Stannis claimed Harrenhal in Robert's name. Robb's banners waved atop Widow's Tower. The realm's heartland lay split, supply lines severed. Ravens flew to Casterly Rock, call off war or face siege of capital. Tywin weighed honor against coffers, both dear, while Joffrey demanded heads. In that lull before next storm, Ned and Jon walked battlements at twilight. Torches below flickered like earthbound stars. "You spoke well in council," Ned said. "Lords twice your age listened." "They listened to need," Jon replied. "Not me." Ned smiled. "True leaders speak through needs of others. Remember that." They paused before a gargoyle melted into grotesque lumps. Jon traced scorched stone. "Do you ever think of telling them, all of them, who I am?" Ned exhaled. "Daily, yet truth wields edge on both sides. Some will kneel in awe, others will hunt you harder. When this war ends, perhaps. A horn blared below. Messengers raced upstairs. Ned caught one's sleeve. The lad panted. "Lord Hand. Sir Barristan sends word. The wolf girl rescued. The other prisoner still. Queen moves to flee to Rock. City in uproar. Nender sea." Ned's pulse hammered. One daughter safe. One still captive. Yon's jaw tightened. "Let us ride," he said. Ned grasped his shoulder. "We will," he vowed. "But we ride smart, not fast." Lighting crackled across distant clouds, as if world itself hammered swords upon anvil of sky. That night, Jon dreamed of storm's end again, but tower stones melted into dragon glass. He stood in hall of mirrors, where each reflection bore different sigil. Direwolf, dragon, crowned stag, flaming heart. One by one the looking glasses shattered until only one remained. Within it, his own face older, hardened, eyes burning blue and violet entwined. Behind that elder self stood a woman with silver hair and violet gaze, hand upon his shoulder. They looked upon an army of dead things marching beneath an aurora of green fire. Ghosts' howl echoed like horn through dreamscape, warning or welcome, he could not tell. He woke before dawn, breathing quick. Outside his tent, the sky shimmered crimson, dawn's first light or distant fire beyond horizon. Word broke by noon. Renly had crowned himself in Highgarden with Lord Macy's blessing, naming Loras Lord Commander of Rainbow Guard, promising summer of love and laughter. Across the narrow sea, Khal Drogo fell from horse, wound festering. Whispers claimed the Khaleesi sought blood magic. The small council in exile began to crumble. Tywin pulled forces toward capital. Stannis insisted they march south now, strike before Renly's roses joined the lions. Ned feared splitting their strength, yet delay risked 2 thrones crowned in pretenders while true heir campaigned. In council that night, arguments flamed like wildfire. Jon watched fathers of houses snarl, each convinced his route led to peace, yet every path branched into rivers of blood. He rose quietly, crossed the yard to Ghost, who had returned with Shireen's escort days earlier. The wolf nosed his palm. Jon whispered the dream, the mirrors, the march of dead. Ghost growled low. Jon touched his forehead to the wolf's, seeking calm. Footsteps approached. Robb, hair damp with sweat. "You slipped away. Needed air." Robb eyed him. "Council's a pit of vipers. They swear they fight for you, yet none asks what you want." "Now." Jon smiled without mirth. "What I want, to run home, hunt in Wolfswood, never weigh kingdom's fate on my shoulders." Robb bumped his arm. "If you ran, I'd have to fetch you, and I'm busy." His grin faded. "Father rides tomorrow at first light. We strike for King's Landing. If we fall, promise me you'll keep Winterfell safe." Jon swallowed. "If we fall, Winterfell may burn too." "Still promise," Robb insisted. Ghost's red eyes glowed in torchlight. Jon clasped Robb's forearm. "I promise." They stood beneath melted gargoyles, 2 boys grown faster than seasons allowed, bound by oaths none of them asked for. Above, a raven wheeled against moon, cawing thrice before diving northward, toward snowfields where another, older war simmered in silence. Maester Luwine in Winterfell watched that raven arrive, scroll bearing cryptic runes of the Night's Watch, wildlings massing, dead things walking. He rubbed joints, worried. With most northern strength marched south, the wall stood thin. He sent ravens west and east, but ravens sometimes vanish in storm, and storms breed beyond the wall like wolves whelping under perpetual night. Yet one message soared south to Harrenhal, where Ned Stark read it by candle. White joys turned ashen. He found Jon standing lonely beneath raw moon. "Beyond wall," Ned said, handing parchment. "The dead stir." Jon read, blood chilling. Prophecy and dream melded with grim ledger of Maester quills. He looked to Ned. "If we war amongst ourselves while winter's true enemy marches." Ned nodded. "Then Lyanna's secret saves nothing." They stared north. Far beyond their reach, Snow clouds reared up like tidal waves. Jon felt chill deeper than any autumn night. A chill born not of war but of ending. 2 dawns later, the host began its march south, leaving Harrenhal's ghosts to echo onward. Stannis rode at point, standard of crowned stag and Dawn's promise snapping in brisk wind. Ned held center with northern spears. Robb commanded outriders. Davos sailed fleet down Green Fork to cut Lannister escape. Behind all rode Jon with Ghost White Wolf pacing flank dot-eyed. The war for a throne now bore heavier weight, the land itself, the living themselves. Treason wheezed beside Jon on pony. "Young prince," he said, "do you know the tale of Azor Ahai, the warrior who tempered Lightbringer in his beloved's heart, to forge blade to save the world?" Jon shook head. "Remember it," Treason said. "Because prophecy clings to blood like burrs, yours doubly so." Jon thought of towers, of shattered mirrors, of a white wolf's howl across violet sky. He thought of a blade tempered not in love but in grief, and he wondered whose heart would bear that forging. Ahead, the road curved south, lined by trees shedding red leaves like drops of summer blood. Beyond curve lay fires of a capital, claws of a crown, and coils of destiny no sword could slice clean. He set heels to horse, following Banner into uncertain light. War awaited, and winter beyond it, and the song would go on until every verse burned through flesh and time alike. But within him stirred a harmony older than either, the mingled voice of wolf and dragon. And though it trembled now, it promised to rise, to grow, to fill the world with music none had heard, when the last snows fell, and the first fires leapt to greet the dark. Jon rode on, and the realm held its breath. "Oh, Kai. Ah. Inda." The host pressed south beneath a sky mottled by iron-gray clouds, their breath coiling in the chill that rides just ahead of true winter. Hooves churned the frost-stiff ground into muddy rivulets, and every iron-shod step seemed to echo against unseen walls. Harrenhal's melted gargoyles, the towers of Winterfell, the broken crown of the Targaryens, each whispering of consequences borne on the backs of boys, thrust early into men's work. Jon felt those echoes in the ache of his sword arm, and in the faint tremor that lingered whenever his mind returned to Bitterbridge, and the night he had killed. Yet the deeper hum inside him was steadier now, a resonance he could not name, as if some hidden harp string tightened in his chest, whenever Ghost padded near, or whenever he dreamed of snow-bright fields touched by dragonfire. On the 5th morning after leaving Harrenhal, the vanguard crested a ridge, and spied the gilded towers of Maidenpool, glimmering beside the sea like shards of sunlight on water. A brisk onshore wind carried gull cries, and the pungent scent of salt and rotting kelp. Stannis drew rein atop a stony rise, his gaze sweeping bastioned walls lightly manned by Lannister spearmen. He raised a gauntleted fist, and the column halted, banners snapping. The crowned stag of House Baratheon, the grey direwolf of the Starks, the new device Ned had named the Dawnwolf. Silver wolf rampant within a dragon-flamed sunburst, flaring bright against the bleak morning. Robb rode forward, helm beneath his arm, cheeks reddened by wind. "The town looks half deserted," he said. "Either Tywin calls his spears to the capital, or plague runs through those streets." "Tywin calls," Stannis answered. "And men fearful of plague keep shutters tight, not gates. Ned, your thoughts?" And then Ned Stark surveyed the distant harbor where Davos' black-hulled ships rode at anchor like ravens on a gray nest. Smoke rose from the quays in gentle plumes. Cook fires, not burning granaries, yet the air seemed taut, expectant. "A swift demand for fealty may open the gates," Ned said. "They are outnumbered. Their lord will bend or break. Better we save our blood for the walls of King's Landing." Robb's gray eyes sparked. "Then let me ride beneath a parley flag. A Stark son first through the gates may give them courage to yield." Then Jon felt the whir of tension along the command ridge. To risk the young wolf at a parlous gate was bold, but so too was leaving him caged behind valor. Stannis considered, jaw working. "Take 20 horse," he decided. "Lord Karstark will flank. Fly white banners. If they show red, pull back. No hero's folly." Robb grinned like a boy gifted a new pup and saluted. Within moments, he and his company cantered down the slope, cloaks streaming. Jon watched the specks diminish against the green and wondered at the fine line between courage and doom. Ghost whined softly beside his horse, as though sensing threads drawn tight. An hour crawled by before a cry rose from the lines. The town gate yawned, its portcullis rasping skyward. Robb's banner joined the towns atop the eastern barbican. A cheer rolled along northern ranks, a sound that warmed cold bones. Stannis allowed himself a curt nod, then signaled advance. By midday the host funneled through Maidenpool's gate to the astonished eyes of fisherfolk and cobblers lining the muddy streets. The Lannister captain handed over keys with little more than a weary shrug. His men laid swords at Stannis' feet, relieved perhaps to trade lion gold for living bones. Inside the great hall of House Mouton, Ned presided over swift justice. Former garrisoners given choice of oath to the crown in Robert's name or dismissal northward without spear. Most chose freedom. Stannis' reputation promised scant warmth for half-hearted allies. Supplies were tallied, wounded tended, ravens dispatched with news of the capture. The host would rest one night, then push west across the Blackwater rush to cut the city from Tywin's arriving legions. Jon found a brief hour of respite in the castle's small god's wood, a half-tended copse of alder and birch surrounding a modest heart tree, whose face peered from red leaves with faint surprise at its new worshippers. He knelt in moss damp with sea mist, Ghost settling at his side like a snowdrift come to life. The hush enfolded him, broken only by the gulls. Jon closed his eyes and let his breath slow, seeking the still place Maester Luwin called the quietude of the mind. Thoughts drifted. Robb cantering through danger, Arya somewhere on the road with Nymeria and Barristan, Sansa a pawn inside the Red Keep, and farther still, great icy wastes where the dead stirred. A tremor ran through him as if the tree's ancient roots shivered. He opened his eyes to find Shireen Baratheon standing a distance away, watching with timid curiosity. She clutched a sheaf of parchment, her grayscale blotches half hidden beneath a knitted cowl. "I didn't mean to startle you," she said, voice soft as falling ash. "I saw you in Ghost, and I thought perhaps the old gods wouldn't mind another listener." Jon rose, brushing moss from his knees. "The old gods listen to all," he said, "even those who serve different faiths." Shireen smiled shyly. "Mother says the seven grow weak, that only our lore's fire can save men from darkness. But the flames frighten me. I like the whisper of leaves better." Jon hesitated, studying the girl's earnest eyes. "There is comfort in fire against cold, but every flame casts shadow. Remember that." He glanced at the pages in her hands. "What are those?" "Stories," she said. "Maester Cresson had me copy Legends of the Long Night. I thought, perhaps you'd raid with me. They speak of a prince who was promised." A chill pricked Jon's spine, recalling Cresson's words of Azor Ahai. He nodded. "Later, if there's time." He tapped the heart tree's brow. "For now I must ready for march. Will you keep the gods company for me?" Shireen's smile widened. "I will." She settled beneath the branches, and Jon felt an odd sense that the leaf face watched her with approval, as if the gods of the north recognized a quiet courage in the girl that others overlooked. Evening's cookfires perfumed the town with stewed crab and barley, and Jon found himself sharing trenchers with Glover spearmen and Stormlander archers. They spoke of home, forests of oaks, bogs of the neck, cliffs above the rainwood, and of loved ones fretting far from battle lines. Jon listened more than he spoke, absorbing cadence and fear alike. When talk turned to him, voices lowered. Some hailed him prince, others muttered of dragons and burning kings. Jon excused himself before tempers frayed, bedding down beside Ghost near the moat's edge under a banner-striped sky. He drifted to sleep, cradled by the lulling lap of waves against pilings. Dreams came swift and vivid. He stood on a wind-swept field of ash beneath a bleeding comet, swords of ice locked against spears of flame. Towers lay broken, the ground split by red fissures that oozed molten light. Across the riven plain, a woman strode, silver hair wild in storm winds, eyes luminous with unshed tears. In her arms she bore 3 newborn dragons, one black and red, one green and bronze, one pale as smoke. She stopped before Jon and spoke without words. Not alone. A shadow larger than mountains stirred behind her, and he felt the chill of death and the blaze of dawn all at once. Ghosts' howl echoed, scattering cinders into night. Jon woke with a start, heart hammering. Dawn's first blush staining the sky. He rose, shaking the dream's embers from his mind, and helped Davos sailors haul crates of salted fish up from the wharf until Horn summoned all to march. Before leaving the quay, Jon glimpsed distant sails on the horizon, pale green banners with golden roses. Renly's fleet, sailing north by the looks of it, seeking to link with Tyrell levies on the Roserad. Davos spat into the sea. Flowers and gold, he muttered, but storms eat both. He dispatched a swift brig to shadow the fleet and report. By mid-morning the united host wended inland, leaving Maidenpools grateful, or prudent, people speck-sized on the shore. Ahead loomed a Blackwater rush, swollen from autumn rains, its waters reflecting pewter skies. Engineers set to work felling trees for pontoon bridges, while outriders scouted shallows. Jon rode with the scouts, eager to learn terrain. The river's current tugged roughly at his stirrups when he tested depth. Beyond the opposite bank fields rolled toward the Kingswood, where Renly's green host might soon break cover. War felt close, the air humming sharp like a blade on whetstone. Come dusk, the first bridge stood, crude, but serviceable. Torchlight flickered on patient ranks lined to cross at dawn. Jon shared a fire with Sir Davos, whose fingers traced the carved stumps of his missing joints whenever he pondered. The smuggler knight gazed across dark water. Wars are won by bread and iron more than glory, Davos said, voice low. Tywin lost much when we took the river stores, but Lannister gold buys new sacks. Our fleet must choke the Blackwater Bay or every victory upriver is for naught. Jon considered. Will the chain hold? He asked, recalling rumors of a massive harbor chain the city smiths forged. Robert had it forged in his first year, Davos said. Byram within Maegor's Keep. It's meant to trap invading ships, not friendly ones. If we can seize the winch towers before chain is raised, the harbor lies open. He smiled wearily. Much hangs on men who hammer rivets we'll never see. Jon poked the fire, sparks swirling like fireflies, and on boys thrust early into battle. Davos' weather-browned face softened. You carry a weight no man should at your age, lad. But burdens shared grow lighter. Lean on those who follow you. Miss. Jon met his eyes. Do they follow me? Or the idea of me? In time, Davos said, there's no difference. At first light, the host crossed. Fog coiled low on the river, muffling hoofbeats. Jon's horse balked midstream, but Ghost trotted across the planks, tail high, as if daring man and beast alike to hesitate. On the far bank, pathfinders marked a road toward Duskendale, where they hoped to skirt the Kingswood and emerge on the capital's eastern flank, avoiding Tywin's mass and Renly's roses. But war seldom heeds tidy plans. Before noon, a rider arrived from Davos' Shadow Brig. Renly's fleet had turned west into Blackwater Bay, intending to slip upriver behind Chain. Highgarden infantry marched not south, but north along Roserad, spearheading toward the city at speed. Joffrey would soon boast 2,000 Tyrell swords and 50 war galleys, unless Stannis' host reached the gates first. Stannis commanded forced march. Drums thrummed through the column, boots hammering rutted tracks. By twilight, they reached the outskirts of the Kingswood, its oaks looming dense and whisper loud. Scouts reported Lannister outriders within, but no major force. Torches stayed dark. Men advanced beneath moon-silvered leaves, every twig snap a thunderclap in hush. At midnight a horn blared ahead, one note, then silence. Jon felt dread stiffen his spine. Stannis ordered halt. Archers fanned out. An arrow hissed from darkness, thudding into a shield. Then the forest erupted with crossbow bolts, the crack of half-seen traps. Men screamed. Horses whinnied, crashing through underbrush. Shadows in golden cloaks flitted between trunks, blades gleaming. The column threatened to buckle. Form on me. Robb called, sword raised, gray wind barreling beside him as twin to Ghost's pale flash. Jon unsheathed, heart thudding. A lion rider charged. Jon parried, wheeled, slit hamstring, spilling man to leaf litter. Ghost snapped the throat of another archer stunned by shadows. Above, Stannis' voice rang steel true, rallying Stormlander pikes into a hedge that bristled like porcupine quills. Archers loosed into the night, guided by shouted bearings from Karstark scouts who hunted elk since boyhood. In moments the ambush faltered. Lions melted, leaving a dozen dead and twice that captured. Robb's cloak dripped blood, but his grin cut the dark. They pressed on, binding wounds as they walked, hours blurring into frozen mist. Before dawn the trees thinned. Campfires glittered distant along the Roserad. Renly's vanguard. Ned had ordered halt on ridge commanding the road. In gray gloom they peered upon banners of golden rose, entwined with Baratheon's stag, the device of Renly the Charmer. Knights huddled at cook fires, unaware of wolves in the wood above. Half remained shieldless, laughing over casks of arbor gold. Robb's eyes gleamed with predatory intent. Stannis narrowed to flint. But Ned shook his head. "Hold," he murmured. "Spilled Baratheon blood serves lions now." At sun's lift Renly himself rode down the line, green armor polished like a pond. Loras Tyrell at his side beamed a smile fit for ballads. When lookouts finally sensed movement on ridge, horns clamored. In confusion rippled the Tyrell camps. Ned pushed his horse forward, flanked by Stannis, Robb, and Jon bearing Stark banner. They descended the slope at measured jog until they halted within bowshot, but outside spear range. Renly cantered forth with only Loras and 2 rainbow guards. Dew glittered on meadows between. "My lords," Renly began, voice warm as harvest sun, "word reaches me that direwolves wander south with storm's fury, but I prayed to find friendly faces beneath that gray." "Friendly indeed," Ned said, stone calm. "The north remembers oath, and the storm remembers blood. Yet names at court grow confused. We seek the rightful crown." Renly's grin faltered. "That would be mine, good uncle, for I am Baratheon as much as Robert, yet half his weight and twice his charm." Stannis snorted. "Charm is piss in a pot. Birthright is law. Robert named the boy Jon as heir. Stand aside." Renly raised brow. "A bastard boy, half Targaryen no less. The realm rejects dragons, and what proof?" "The king's own seal," Ned said, lifting Robert's will. "Witnessed by lord commanders and maesters. Attempt love of realm Renly. Let us pass." Tyrell knights gathered behind Renly, but Loras whispered at his ear. Renly sighed theatrically. "You know I adore family, but Tyrell roses bristle at talk of dragon heirs. However, no man may doubt Ned Stark's honor." He flashed a smile at Jon. "Nor the boy's valiant tale. Therefore, let me propose. Join me. Bend knee, Ned, and all lands north of Neck remain yours in perpetuity. Stannis may keep Dragonstone. The boy can be warded at Highgarden under my protection, safe from Cersei's knives. I will ride to the city with flowers in bloom." Robb's horse sidestepped, catching his ire. "You keep my brother hostage." "Hostage," Renly scoffed. "Word, raised in luxury." "Then sigh." Jon felt heat flood his cheeks. "I choose my own keep, my lord." Renly smiled thinly. "Children seldom wisely choose." Stannis spoke, voice like winter breaking rock. "Enough. Pass or perish." Renly considered, tapping pommel. "I will not shed Baratheon blood today. I withdraw my vanguard to allow you the road. But come to King's Landing and you shall find the rose-crowned stag across the gate, and then we must settle this, one way or another." Stannis inclined head, neither acceptance nor friendship. Renly wheeled, banners turning like green surf, and his force filed west toward the Gold Road to circumvent. When dust settled, Ned's host marched south unopposed, but no less burdened by looming battle. Jon rode beside Ned. "Why spare him?" he asked. "Because Tywin Lannister watches," Ned replied. If we bleed each other thin, lions devour what's left. Best save swords for the gate. Do you trust Renly to keep his word? Not trust, Ned said, but hope the realm yet holds some brotherly mercy. Jon glanced back. Ghost trotted olive shadows between pikes. Brotherly mercy, he whispered, thinking of Robb's promise at Harrenhal to keep Winterfell safe, and of distant Benjen vanished into snow. In his chest, that taut harpstring thrummed again. They reached the northern walls of King's Landing at dusk, 4 days later, earlier than any scout predicted. Dust cloud preceded them, trailing like a comet tail, and the city's sentries scrambled at sudden sight of gray and black banners cresting the hills. Bells clanged warning. The chain across Blackwater Bay rattled skyward. But Devos' fleet had slipped upriver ahead of word, capturing the northern winch tower in midnight raid. As Jon rode through Palisade of River Gate, he saw Davos sails within the bay, catapults ready atop prows, Lannister galleys pinned beneath chain, like beetles beneath boot. Still, the city's walls were thick, and its defenders many. Gold cloaks swarmed parapets. Scorpions loaded quarrels big as javelins. Joffrey's banners, crowned stag with lion's mane, fluttered garish. Tywin's host had not yet arrived, but red-cloaked companies garrisoned each barbican. Cersei commanded from Maegor's holdfast, Sansa's life her favorite pawn. Ned convened war council in the burnt shell of a windmill beyond arrow range. Maps spread across cast plank, candles guttering in breeze, and voices clashed. Escalade on northern wall. Starvation siege with fleet locking harbor. Infiltration to seize gate. Barristan and Arya had not yet reached Stannis, rumored still threading secret ways inside. Time pressed. 2 and 3 days marched to the west, Renly perhaps 5 from the south. The moment to strike was now, or watch alliance choke between hammer and anvil. Jon stood silent near the back, listening. When arguments frayed to silence, he spoke, surprising them. King's Landing walls break not by steel alone, he said. People inside starve for bread, bleed for taxes, fear Lannister blades. If we show them a better prince, they may open gates rather than die. Karstark snorted, but Ned gestured. Ain, how? Jon swallowed, eyes on map. Send word through Fleabottom. The Prince of Wolf and Dragon offers remission of debts, grain from Storm's End stores, safe roads north for traders, pardon to gold cloaks, who lay down arms. If small folk riot, gold cloaks switch loyalties, gates open from within. Then? Stannis frowned. A gamble. War is gamble, Davos said. But I've seen sailors mutiny for less. Offer coin, they'll haul anchor. Offer hope, they'll haul gods. Robb clapped Jon's shoulder. Let me ride with Mormont's spears to eastern postern, under cover of night. If gates crack, we surge. So plan was laid. Davos men would sail within harbor at moonrise, firing signal arrows if chain remained down. Barristan's clandestine entry hopefully stirred chaos. Meanwhile, Jon drafted proclamations, his hand shaky yet determined. They were copied swiftly by rivermen who knew city inns. Under twilight cloak, these riders slipped through sewers and sallyports captured by Davos, scattering parchments through alleys, bribing vine sellers, paying jesters to shout of a prince, returned to free them from lion jaws. Jon watched them depart from wharf, and felt heart pound with dread, and hope twinned. Ghost leaned against his thigh. If they fail, we storm anyway, he whispered, and Ghost whuffed as if to say storms are what wolves do. Night fell deep, heavy with cloud. Torches along parapets burned dim behind murder holes. From across the water occasional cries drifted, arguments, laughter, the fizz of torchbrand dropped in river. Jon paced the siege line, checking archers, soothing green lads who trembled at stillness. Near midnight, a horn blew thrice from Davos worship fury, a prearranged code. Chain disabled, harbor open. Seconds later, a green flare streaked skyward, blossoming above the city like ghostly aurora. Gold cloak shouted, confusion rippled, then from Fleabottom rose a roar. A human engine of anger turned hope. Flames flickered in back streets, bells clanged unsynchronized. Somewhere within that tumult, Jon pictured Arya's small shape darting along rooftops, Barristan's white cloak flashing like lightning. Stannis gave order. Assault columns advance. Ziga towers lumbered forth, covered in damp hides. Robb led first escalade at Mud Gate. Karstark hugged King's Gate on east. Jon rode with Stannis at Lion Gate, where grain markets sprawled outside walls. The air rattled with screams, arrows beating drums. Ziga tower wheels groaned across ditch planks. Grapnels soared. Gold cloaks traded quarrels at first, but many wavered as rumors tied serenged courage. The king slain by his own mother. The hand betrayed. The Prince of Peace outside the gate. Some lowered bows, others turned on Lannister officers. The fight inside the battlements grew fiercer than that beyond. At Lion Gate, a drawbridge thudded down under rebel gold cloak control. Bolts turned inward. Stannis spurred, roaring killer's prayer. Jon followed. Sword raised, ghost bounding ahead like moonlit blade. Inside the gatehouse corridors rang with clash of steel. Smoke thickening from pitch fires lit then abandoned. Jon parried a halberd, rammed pommel into guard's visor, felt bone crunch sickening under gauntlet. He pressed deeper through archways, Stannis elite behind. Near the fish market, an explosion rattled stones. Wildfire store ignited by accident or sabotage. Green tongues licked sky, painting chaos infernal. Yet the path to Red Keep lay open as gold cloaks fled toward Sept refuge. Robb's riders burst from Inner Street, gray wind blood-slicked, and clasped hands with Jon in passing. "Go!" Robb shouted. "Save Sansa." Ned's contingent charged toward Sept of Baelor, where rumor claimed Cersei held court with Joffrey to cow crowd. Jon's memory flashed to tales of his father executed on those steps in another life. He kicked horse harder. Columns converged on square of the father. Thousands of small folk pressed shoulder to shoulder, chanting at Sept stairs where torches illuminated marble pillars and a makeshift throne of gilded wood. On that seat lounged Joffrey, black hair dyed darker still, crown askew, crossbow resting on knee. At his right stood Cersei, pale visage set like alabaster mask. At left, Sir Meryn Trant and a half-dozen red cloaks ringed Sansa, her hair disheveled, eyes wide but tearless. Cersei raised arms and shrieked, "Traitors at the gate! See how the beast boy drags dragons on his banner! Will you trade your city to a Targaryen demon?" Jeers and rotted vegetables met her cry. The crowd's mood tipped toward riot. Knights ringed dais, uncertain. Jon pushed through bodies, ghost snarling path clear. Robb reached his flank, Stannis, Ned, and Barristan behind. When the crowd parted enough, Jon swung down before dais stairs and called, voice cracking yet carrying. "People of King's Landing, I am Jon of Houses Stark and Targaryen, named heir by King Robert's own hand. I bring no dragonfire to burn you, only bread from Storm's End, and justice for a realm bled dry by lies. Lay down arms, stand aside, and no man in this square shall suffer harm." Silence rippled. A stone dropped in still pond. Then near the statues a gold cloak shouted, "Bread for Flea Bottom." Others took up cry. Crossbow bolts rattled on cobbles as defectors turned on diehard lions. Sir Meryn raised sword to drag Sansa inside, but a thrown brick cracked his helm. The knight stumbled. Sansa wrenched free and bolted down steps into Ned's embrace. Cersei shrieked, seized Joffrey's arm, dragged him toward the king's sedan chair. But Ghost lunged, fangs bared. Cersei recoiled. Joffrey dropped crossbow, face blanching. Stannis strode forward, blade leveled. The queen's guards folded without fight, as crowds surged chanting, "Bread and truth." Cersei's emerald gaze bored hatred into Jon, but pale terror curled her lips. Barristan claimed her sword and Joffrey's crown. He knelt before Jon, placing circlet at his feet. In that moment time seemed to hush. Jon stared at the golden antler and stag band glinting blood-streaked in torchlight. He heard the high rasp of distant wildfire still burning, smelled sweat, ashes, sour wine, felt eyes of thousands on him. He did not reach for the crown. Instead he lifted it, turned and offered it to Stannis. The square gasped. "My claim is to serve the realm," Jon said, voice steady. "Roberts will name me, but law names his brother until I come of age. Accept this crown, Lord Stannis, and I will kneel. Together we heal what lions broke." Stannis stared. Battle grime streaked across stern face. For heartbeat he seemed carved of granite. Then he sheathed sword, took crown, and set it upon Jon's brow instead. "Kingship is not granted but born," he declared, voice carrying across stunned hush. "You have proved you will set aside power for law. Therefore, law shall confirm your right. Kneel, Lord Jon, only long enough to rise as King Jaehaerys of houses Targaryen and Stark, first of his name, Prince of Dragons and Wolves, Protector of Realm." Then so. Jon started to protest, but Ned clasped his shoulder, eyes shining with unshed tears. Robb grinned feral. Davos raised cheer. Stormlanders followed. Soon the square thundered with thousands. "Jaehaerys! Jaehaerys!" In the din Cersei was led away, Joffrey sobbing. Sansa hugged Arya, who emerged from throng clutching Nymeria's scruff. Ghost licked Jon's hand, red eyes glowing like rubies in dawn light. Yet triumph tasted bittersweet. Tywin's army still marched. Renly's roses bloomed along Roserad, and north of Wall, darker foes stirred. The Boy King's throne was a furnace no less fierce than dragonfire. 3 days later, the Red Keep's throne room thronged with banners of direwolf, stag, and sunburst wolf dragon. Jon sat not on the Iron Throne, too large forged from conquests, but on a high-backed oaken seat before it, a regent's perch. Stannis stood at his right as hand, and Lord Protector until Jon reached manhood. Ned Stark bore the title of Lord High Warden North and South, ensuring link between both halves of his blood. Robb was named Prince of Winterfell, Sansa betrothed to Edric Storm to cement Stormland's North Alliance. Arya grumbled, but agreed to squire under Ser Barristan to temper her wild steel. Catelyn arrived on swift barge, tears and smiles warring when she saw all her cubs alive. Even the ones she'd feared would cost them all. The lords swore fealty amid pomp. Tyrell envoys arrived pledging honors if Jon married Margaery one day. Dornish ambassadors brought Watergarden's peace. The Vale's young Lord Arryn clapped shyly. Only Pike and Casterly Rock stood absent, baleful clouds on horizon. In private council, Stannis pressed war's unfinished business. "Tywin is near Stony Septi. If he lays siege, we bleed Kinslayer wars. Best we offer term, trial for Cersei, safe passage for host home, gold levies to rebuild." Ned inclined head. "And Renly? He will bend knee or be shown his vanity," Stannis said. "But we shall offer him council seat, ward in Storm's End, Tyrell pardons. Mace loves gardens more than graves." Jon listened, crown light yet heavy. "Send ravens," he agreed. "We rebuild, not ruin." Still, he sought Maester Cresson that night in Rookery. "How long until winter truly comes?" Jon asked, watching ravens flutter dark. Cresson sighed. "The white ravens fly from the citadel when snows grip the neck. A season, perhaps 2. And the dead? Old tales warn they march with winter's heart." The maester touched Jon's sleeve. "King Jaehaerys, do not let crowns blind you to North's shadow." Jon nodded. In his dreams he still saw the woman with dragon hatchlings and the endless army of whites. Crown or no, some wars required more than steel and decrees. He descended to Godswood that grew small beside Traitor's Walk, knelt before the single weirwood transplanted after Robert's rebellion, its face newer, less wise than Winterfell's but listening all the same. Ghost lay at roots. Jon closed his eyes. "I am king of shattered realm, yet blood and snow bind me to storms beyond these walls," he whispered. "Guide me, old gods, new gods, any who heed. Help me forge peace before darkness swallows us." Leaf rustled though no wind blew. He opened eyes to find Arya perched on low branch above, grinning. "Kings don't pray alone," she said. "They send their little sisters to stab the dark." Jon laughed softly. "Then stay near, Needle." He rose. Together they walked beneath red leaves falling like drops of dawn, a white wolf padding silent at their heels. Tywin Lannister received peace terms outside Stony Septai. He read them thrice, jaw clenching. Casterly coffers would bleed, but not as much as another war. Reports, said smallfolk, adored new boy king. Renly wavered. Pike stirred rebellion. Fighting north and south at once risked Rock's fortune. He burned the letter, then dictated acceptance, conditional on Cersei's trial before Great Council, not mob justice. Stannis delivered curt assent. Cersei would face noble court in half a year when travel eased. Renly bent knee at Bitterbridge after Loras convinced him Tyrell future lay beside crown, not against. The Rainbow Guard dissolved into King's retinue. Renly remained Lord of Storm's End, though younger Baratheon pride smarted under nephew's rule. Davos used lion fines to commission ships for a northern expedition. Gold archers and builders turned slipways into forest of masts, each keel christened with both northern and storm names. Winter's Storm, Dawnwolf, Northwind's Fury. In months ahead they would ferry grain to White Harbor, bring obsidian from Dragonstone to the Wall, and stand ready should dragons call across sea. For across the water Daenerys Targaryen stood on a pyre at dusk, stepping into flame that birthed 3 dragon whelps. She emerged unburned, Khalasar kneeling, Jorah whispering prophecy come flesh. When ravens bearing news of a nephew king reached Qarth, she smiled. Family, she murmured, not alone. And the dragons answered with smoke-bright cries. Beyond the wall, white shadows watched sky where red comets still burned faint. They felt the dragons hatch, felt wolf dragon king crowned, felt gears of fate turn anew. In silent order they marched through drifting snows, eyes pale as frost, toward realms of warm flesh that had forgotten the long night's true refrain. Winter's first snows dusted King's Landing when Jon ascended the Iron Throne for his formal coronation, though furnace braziers blazed inside. The hall smelled of pine resin, new wax, and cloth of silver, a sharper scent than Lannister crimson luxuries. Maids scattered wolfbane petals. Septons and old gods' priests both blessed the ceremony. A crown of silver direwolf heads twisting into dragon wings placed upon dark curls while crowds erupted. Jon took oaths from lords then spoke, voice strong. This throne was forged by conquest, let it now be tempered by justice. We will rebuild roads, feed the hungry, and forgive those who lay down swords. Yet beware. Cold winds rise. All houses must stand united or fall to night eternal. Cheers roared, though some muttered. But as ruling months passed, grain wagons rolled north free of tariffs. Riverlords returned to ruined villages with coin for timber. Even Dornish emissaries praised new council seats. Sansa thrived in courtly arts. Arya sparred nightly. Robb returned north to govern. Stannis oversaw law strict but fair. Davos rooted out corruption in harbor. Cresson guided young King's studies until Maester's lungs failed one soft spring night, leaving Jon weeping by candle as ravens gurgled condolences. New Maester Samwell Tarly, plump and gentle, arrived from Old Town with crates of obsidian daggers and scrolls on others. Jon listened rapt, heart plucked again by hidden harp string. He summoned Lord Commander Jorah Mormont of Night's Watch to capital, pledged castles garrisoned with crown men, and vowed to ride north when harvest stored. War forged peace, but peace prepared for war of deeper night. The year turned. Sails arrived from Pentos, envoys of Queen Daenerys, dragons grown size of hounds atop masts. She proposed parley at Dragonstone, the island once Aegon's cradle, now potential bridge of bloodkin across seas. Council debated. Some feared 2 Targaryens would clash. Others dreamed drakes over White Walkers. Jon met Daenerys halfway at Blackwater Bay, aboard flagship Dawnwolf. When they stood face to face on deck, surf crashing, she looked upon him with Rhaegar's eyes, softened by exile storms. He saw Lyanna's courage reflected. Neither spoke at first, but dragons circled overhead, screeching joyous. Daenerys knelt, offering hilt of Heartsbane's sword from ancient Valyria. You have the realm, she said. Let me have its defense. Together we end the dark. Jon lifted her gently. Together, he whispered. Winter came in earnest. Wall ravens screamed of abandoned outposts. white foes unseen. Jon rode north with Daenerys and Robb at his side, Stannis guarding throne. Knights of Vale flew with them, Dornish spears, Tyrell bowmen, even a few cleansed gold cloaks. Ghost led Nymeria's pack, grey winds howl answering. Dragons soared overhead, wings eclipsing pale sun, fire melting snow dunes where dead advanced. At Castle Black, the watch cheered king and queen both. Jon met Samwell on the ramparts where wind knifed bone. Far beyond, blue fires winked in dusk, eyes of others, inexorable. Jon felt no fear. The heat inside him matched dragonfire, and the chill matched ice. Prophecy's harpstring now thrummed a full chord. Ice and fire not opposed but intertwined. Song of Dawn. He turned to men assembled, raised Longclaw bright with fresh forged obsidian core. For realm of living, he cried, voice rolling across frozen wastes. For houses united, for dawn to break eternal night, ride. Torches flared, horns sounded. Dragons screamed flame into sky turned crimson. An army of free folk, knights, spearmen, wolves and dragons, surged through open gate into white wilderness. Behind them, wall shadows swallowed noise, but ahead the horizon shimmered with promise of battle and rebirth alike. And if the gods, old, new, and sleeping beneath ice, listened, perhaps they too felt that harmonious chord rise, as wolf and dragon together sang the realm's new song into the heart of winter. Snow clawed at man and beast alike as the great host pushed northward across the frozen foothills of the Frost Fangs, torchlight swallowed by the immensity of night. Each exhale turned to ice on beards, on reins, on the feathered fletchings of arrows carried by men who had never before ventured beyond the wall. Moonlight spilled through ragged clouds only to vanish behind flurries that stung like shards of glass. Yet for all the winter's cruelty, a hush of awe accompanied the advance. Riders in Winterfell gray, archers in Tyrell green, Dothraki screamers wrapped head to heel in quilted fur. Free folk warriors shouting boasts over the thunder of mammoth-drawn sleds, all marching together toward a darkness older than the oldest king's line. 3 dragons swept overhead, their shadows rippling across snowfields, wings beating time with the distant drums that kept men's hearts from stilling in their chests. At the van rode Jon, King Jaehaerys, Longclaw strapped at his back, and Daenerys beside him upon a horse the color of ash, her hair a banner bright against the swirling white. They made camp on the 3rd evening in a shallow vale marked by weather-worn standing stones. The stones leaned like half-buried sentinels, their flanks carved with spiral runes so ancient, even Old Town's scrolls offered only guesses. Some whispered of the first men's final covenant with the children, others of stars that fell long before winters had names. Here the host raised hide awnings against the wind, their fires clustered around dragon bone braziers that hissed and sparked when embers snapped. Tormund Giantsbane roared a tale of a bear he once bedded, and 700 northerners laughed, because the sky itself seemed too brittle to risk tears. But even merriment could not wholly extinguish the tension that crawled beneath furs and boiled in the pit of every stomach. Beyond the next ridge, the dead were gathering. Jon met his council in a ring of tall stones, whose tops were frosted like polished pewter. Robb unpacked rough maps inked by Night's Watch rangers. Samwell Tarly spread obsidian blades on a cloth and explained once more how dragonglass shattered the White Walker's frozen flesh. Bran attended in spirit, eyes milky and distant, within a litter hung with black felt. He rode bodily with the host, yet his mind drifted along the weirwood routes, scouting wide arcs of forest no ranger could reach. Each time his voice returned to the council, it carried whispers of leaves, impressions of invisible currents. A cliffside choked with white carcasses testing the wall, an ice-bound lake vibrating under thousands of shuffling feet, a weirwood whose carved face wept tears of real blood. Daenerys listened with a stillness that belied the restless flicker of Drogon's fiery reflection in her violet eyes. Our scout sighted a column of dead 4 leagues northeast, Robb said, tracing a gloved finger. They're moving toward this cleft, Snake Pass, where the frost rivers tangle. Jon considered. If we block the pass, we may buy a day, perhaps 2, for the supply train to reach the Fist. Or we lure them through and break them, Tormund countered, jabbing a thumb at his chest. Let me and the free folk hold the gorge. Wolves and dragons swoop down from on high. He barked a laugh. The crows can tally corpses after. Daenerys shifted. I will not commit Drogon's fire where the wind funnels like a bellows. A single gust could roast our own men. She turned to Jon then, voice quiet. But a blade can go where flame cannot. You feel it, don't you? Jon did feel it, a pressure beneath the sternum that quickened when he thought of the standing stones, of the weirwoods, of the ancient words Bran sometimes spoke in his sleep. Ice preserves, fire releases. The gorge is narrow, he said. Too narrow for dragons, but not for glass and steel. The wolves will fight beside the spearwives. I will lead that charge. Robb's protest burned behind his teeth, but he stopped when he saw the unspoken certainty in his brother's eyes. A certainty mirrored in Nymeria's low growl and Ghost's red stare. The council agreed. At first light Jon would ride with a mixed force of northern spears, free folk raiders and Dothraki bowmen to bar Snake Pass, while the greater host fortified the fist of the first men. A ringed hill Bran insisted must not fall. For stone they remembered the ancient songs. That night Daenerys found Jon at the edge of camp, staring across a moonlit plain where hoarfrost glittered like shards of glass. Between them stood the smallest of her dragons, Rhaegal, his serpentine neck swaying as he tasted the air. Snow steamed when it touched his green bronze scales. Tomorrow, she said, brushing snow from her lashes. You lead warriors into a funnel of death. You cannot know how many walkers wait. I know enough, Jon answered. Enough to fear. Enough to act anyway. She studied him, reading the weight of crown and promise etched in the fine lines that winter had already begun to carve at the corners of his eyes. There is a tale the Dothraki women whisper, she said, of two fires that meet on the plain. One burns blue, one burns gold. Where they clash, glass turns to water and water to steam, and the world is made new in the cloud. I did not understand. Now I wonder whether they speak of ice and dragonfire. Jon reached out, resting a gloved hand on Rhaegal's warm snout. If we clash wrongly, the world will be steam and cinder. Then we strike like smiths, not to shatter, but to temper. Her breath ghosted the words. Come back to me, Jaehaerys. The realm cannot lose its king on the eve of dawn. Jon felt the truth of it. Yet another truth pulsed deeper still. Dawn meant nothing if night was not first driven back. He drew her close, the dragon watching with slitted, strangely knowing eyes. They shared warmth, and in that moment, the hush of snow seemed a lullaby older than speech. Before false dawn grayed the east, Jon strode through the sleeping camp, Ghost padding silent at his heel. Around him men roused in slow ripples. Karstark axemen shrugging into hauberks, Dornish bowmen knotting leather, the giant one hoisting a tree trunk club. Arya, already awake, buckled on a slender obsidian dagger Bran had gifted her. She met Jon's gaze with fierce pride, no trace of the girl who once chased cats amid King's Landing's alleys. Try not to die, she said, voice steady. Same to you, he replied. They clasped forearms, ice-cold iron meeting quick blood, and parted. By sunrise, Jon's detachment snaked across frozen ridges toward Snake Pass, leaving behind the main army where Robb and Daenerys oversaw rampart lines of earthwork and palisade rising about the fist. Snake Pass proved a wound in the mountains. Cliffs of black ice rising sheer on either side, the gorge floor no wider than Winterfell's main yard. Frost rivers threaded its length, glassy surfaces masked by rime. The wind keened through, gusts so piercing men's eyes watered behind slit visors. Jon arrayed his force in 3 echelons. Free folk shield wall at the mouth, northern pikemen behind, anchoring flanks against cliff buoys. Dothraki riders in the rear, bows strung and obsidian-tipped. The ground itself would fight for them, he hoped. He unsheathed Longclaw, Valyrian steel darker than night, the snowflake sigils in the fuller glimmering faintly. It felt oddly warm. Each heartbeat seemed to echo along the blade. The dead arrived at dusk, heralded by a chill that turned blood thick. They came in silence, a glacier-blue horizon of clacking bones and half-frozen flesh, eyes cerulean stars. At their head glided 6 walkers astride undead elk, crystal spears shimmering with captured moonlight. Jon counted, breath steady. Behind him, Tormund's booming laugh cut the hush. "Come then, corpses. Free folk have fire in their guts and axes in their hands." Snow exploded as the first rank of wights lunged, claws scraping steel. Obsidian arrowheads hissed overhead, felling dozens in black shards and flashes of blue fire. Jon plunged forward with Ghost leaping at his flank, wolf and man carving a path where Longclaw's edge trailed vapor, as though the blade exhaled. A wight snapped at his leg. Jon swung, the strike cleaving bone and ice alike. The creature collapsed in shards. The walkers advanced, spear points dripping frost. One hurled its weapon. A Karstark shield shivered into rime, shattering. Jon leapt into the gap, meeting an obsidian axe lobbed by a spearwife and hurling it end over end. The wedge of black glass buried in the walker's brow, and the creature burst like thin ice struck by a hammer, shards tinkling against the stone. Blue mist writhed where it fell. 4 walkers remained. They spread, spear tips tracing arcs of frost that made pikemen's iron wilt with cold. Tormund hacked at a white bear that barreled through freefolk shields, its rotted hide steaming. Behind, Dothraki arrows whistled, each shot clipper true. Wights fell in rows yet rose again, unless pierced by dragonglass. Jon felt the pass narrowing around him, as if the cliffs themselves shuddered. A crack like 1,000 shields sundered overhead. He glanced up. The overhang groaned under the weight of wind-packed snow. An idea burst in his mind, clear as summer lightning. He fought toward Tormund, shouting for retreat in the old tongue. Confused but trusting, the free folk began to fall back step by bloody step. Northern pikes angled, supporting withdrawal. The walkers pressed forward, sensing weakness. Jon spied Wun striding up the gorge with branch club. "Strike the ledge!" Jon roared, pointing. The giant followed his gesture, reared back and slammed the club into the cliff face thrice. Stone cracked, echoing like cannon fire, and a tongue of ice sheared free. Snow roared down in an avalanche of glittering white, swallowing wights and walkers alike, entombing them beneath tons of frozen death. The blast of icy wind knocked men from their feet. Jon flung himself over a spearwife, shielding her with cloak as crystal shards scoured armor. When the roar faded, only one walker stood, half buried, its elk crushed. It screeched, blue vapor spiraling, and hurled frost-laced darts so cold steel blackened. Jon staggered upright, long claw raised. Ghost lunged, but the walker's spear flicked, tossing the wolf aside with a yelp. Jon charged, meeting spear shaft with steel. Frost raced along the blade, singing. Pain bloomed as the spear nicked his shoulder, ice scorching deeper than fire. He slid aside, pivoting inside the walker's reach, and with a two-handed hew took its head. The spear clattered, then the walker shattered, crystal dust drifting on wind like shards of stars. Silence claimed the pass, broken only by labored breaths and the groan of settling snowpack. Wights lay inert, puppet strings severed with the walker's demise. Men stared at Jon, at avalanche-buried enemy, and slowly cheers rose, ragged, incredulous, but real. The victory cost blood. 36 dead, more wounded, yet the pass was held. Jon ordered field pyres of dragonglass and oil. No corpse, friend or foe, would rise again. They worked through night's black marrow, their faces lit by green-tinged flame where obsidian crackled. Before dawn, Bran's ravens found Jon. One perched upon his gauntlet, talons cold through leather, eyes swirling deeper black than the sky behind. Through that gaze, Bran spoke. The heart of winter moves toward the shivering sea. You must take the fist now. I go east to open a door the children sealed. Trust leaf and root. We are with you. The raven launched into gloom. Jon watched it vanish and felt, for an instant, the vastness of the forest mind, a web older than castles. He tightened cloak and marched his weary band back toward the main host, where fires glowed at the fist like embers of a giant hearth. When he arrived, the sight steeled his heart. Ringed fortifications finished, catapults armed with barrels of wildfire, trenches lined with obsidian stakes. Daenerys met him beneath a banner grown stiff with frost. Relief flashed, then settled into grief at the dead he brought with him. She opened her arms and he fell into them, the weight of crown forgotten a moment. Word spread quick of avalanche triumph and of Bran's new warning. Council formed again in the stone-walled hollow atop the fist. Here Bran's litter stood open beneath carved annuluses, ancient rings said to be built by the first men to watch the stars of a vanished age. Bran's body lay still, but his voice came through the fire, whispered by leaves thrown into the flame by Samwell. "There is a place east of the gorge," the fire-voiced leaves said, "where the children forged an ice ward before men knew iron. Beneath that ward sleeps the wellspring of the others. I can break its shell, but the heart must be pierced by steel and fire both." The flames danced green, then blue. "Send the Dragon Queen and the Wolf King while the host holds the fist. The enemy gathers to swallow your army whole. Cut off the head and the body falls still." Daenerys and Jon stared into the flames, seeing shapes only they might name. Neither flinched. Robb clasped Jon's arm. "Let me lead the defense here. If the dead converge, they'll find a wall of northern spears and dragonflame." "And what of you?" Jon asked Daenerys. She answered by calling softly in Valyrian. Drogon descended from the night like a living ember. "We fly east," she said. "You and I. One dragon alone cannot melt a glacier, but two riders, wolf and fire, may tip the world." Stannis protested from afar, the King Regent's voice reaching across leagues by Maester Lens. Abandoning command at such a moment risked realm's hope. Ned's raven urged caution, but Ned's heart knew the pulse of destiny, and his message ended with, "Do what honor demands. Even when honor is story, no man will believe." Preparations moved, swift. Jon chose a retinue of 8, Arya for deft shadow work, Samwell as lorekeeper, Davos for counsel, Tormund and one for raw strength, Jorah for Daenerys' guard, and Val, the spearwife prince of Styr, who spoke lost tongues of the children. Ghost rounded the company. Nymeria stayed with Robb to guard the fist. Dawn spilled pale pink over ice plains when Drogon stooped to pick up a cargo, netting that cradled Jon and the small group. Rhaegal followed. Swayed by Daenerys' command, Viserion remained to light siege torches above the fist. Few men had flown harnessed beneath dragon talons. Fewer still across wild winter sky. The world fell away in swirling drifts. The roar of wings drowned all else. Below, the White's army shifted like a plague of shadows. Above flashed auroras caused by the cold colliding with dragon heat, painting sky ribbons of green and violet. They set down upon a headland overlooking the shivering sea. An expanse of water so dark and still it seemed a mirror to the void. Inland, an ice forest rose. Petrified trees turned to crystal. Each trunk hummed in the wind, producing tones eerie and aching. At its center, Bran promised, lay the ward. Moving through that forest was like treading inside a bell. Every step struck resonances, sending silver ripples through trunks. Sam pressed a palm to one and gasped. The bark sang of millennia, of children's laughter and giants' dirges. Tormund muttered prayers he hadn't used since childhood. Even Drogon seemed subdued, his flame guttering low to avoid shattering the music. They reached a clearing where a pool lay frozen clear as glass, moon sliver caught within like an eye. At pool's center rose a mound of purest ice, pulsing faint blue, veins of darkness swirling. Daenerys exhaled ruby vapor. "This is it," she whispered. "I feel opposition." Val knelt, placing bare palm to ice. She spoke in guttural syllables. The mound answered with a crack that echoed miles. The pool fissured. Rhaegal snarled. Sam drew an obsidian blade, hand trembling. Ghosts' hackles lifted. Then Bran's voice flowed through the trees, deeper than before, accompanied by a chorus like wind through chimes. "I have opened the door. Hurry." The mound split, disgorging cold mist so bitter lungs burned. From that mist emerged a figure tall and gaunt, crowned with icy horns. The Night King of old tales, though in this visage he wore the stark colors of House Stark inverted, black trimmed with silver ice. In his hand, a spear of frozen star metal bled morning light. Behind, shadows formed ranks, white walkers drawn to the heart's breach. Jon stepped forward. "Bran once saw you healed by love," he called, voice steady despite pain of frost-cutting throat. "There is still time to lay down death." The Night King tilted his horned head. From him came a voice like crackling lake ice. "I am the wound of broken promise. Time left me beyond the living. Only equal sacrifice closes the circle." Daenerys strode to Jon's side, Drogon looming behind. "We bring both fire and ice. We will mend the circle." She drew a slender Valyrian blade gifted by Selmy. Its edge gleamed red in dragonlight. The Night King raised his spear. Frost spread along ground, coiling around Jon and Daenerys' boots. The first walker lunged, but Arya hurtled past, blade of dragonglass punching clean through its throat, turning it to shrapnel. Tormund and one formed barrier, smashing icy foes with axe and trump club. Samwell chanted fragments from the Jade Compendium, the words shimmering like fireflies around the pool, twisting the music of petrified trees. Jorah and Davos defended Sam's circle. Ghost circled Night King, snarling white against blue gloom. Jon and Daenerys advanced, Longclaw and Dragonblade crossing before them in X of dawn. The Night King moved with grace unnatural, spear parried both blades in blur. Sparks of frost and flame flew, lighting branch shadows. Jon felt arm numbing where spear met steel, cold so deep it seared. Daenerys caught a rye-post on her Valyrian edge, but frost bloomed along her glove. Drogon breathed a narrow jet. The Night King swept spear, splitting flame into fork that singed snow but left him untouched. Rhaegal circled overhead, wing beats fanning whirling blizzard. Jon saw the mound's veins darken, pulse faster. Bran's voice, faint, warned, "The ward mends itself. End him now." "Damn." Daenerys met Jon's eyes. In them he read the plan unspoken. She lunged, drawing the Night King's spear high with flourish. He countered, stabbing low. Jon rolled beneath, slashing at thigh. Steel bit, but frost sealed wound instantly. Still, blue ichor hissed. The Night King turned, focusing on Jon. Daenerys pivoted behind, slicing across horned crown. Small shards flew. For heartbeat, the Night King faltered. In that gap, Bran whispered through wind, "Blood for blood, blade forged in two fires." Jon understood. He drew a dirk of dragonglass from belt, sliced palm. Daenerys did same. Blood, ruby and crimson, dripped onto Longclaw's fuller. The steel drank it, howl rising. Flame raced the edges. Frost traced the ridge. The sword glowed brilliant white at core, haloed gold and blue, a true lightbringer, born not of murdered love, but of shared will. The Night King lunged. Jon parried and riposted, the new forged blade meeting star metal spear in flare so bright trees cast rainbow reflections. Ice shattered along spear. Cracks raced to Night King's chest. He recoiled too late. Jon stepped in, drew every oath, every memory of Lyanna's promise and Rhaegar's dream, and plunged Lightbringer through the Night King's heart. Blue light erupted. A sound like glaciers calving thundered across forest. The Night King's eyes blazed, then dimmed. His body fractured into snow dust, swirling upward. At that instant, the black veins of the mound flashed white and snapped. A ring of light rippled outward across the land. In its passing, every walker froze mid-strike and crumbled. In far distances unseen, whites collapsed like puppets with strings cut. Silence. Wind no longer howled. It sighed. The petrified trees rang one final chord. Minor, plaintive, then settled. Jon knelt, blade buried in crystal that melted beneath new sun's warmth. Daenerys crouched, pressing her bleeding hand to his. Their mingled blood steamed atop the sword, then vanished, accepted by steel and snow alike. Around them, companions staggered among icy fragments. One woman's laugh boomed relief, Tormund whooped hoarse until tears froze on beard. Arya wiped dragonglass blade clean on dead leaf. Sam leaned on Davos, eyes wide behind frost-beaded lashes. Rhaegal hissed joy. Drogon answered with thunderclap roar, flame arching into dawn. Jon rose, shoulders sagging but gaze clear. Lightbringer no longer glowed yet felt alive, pulse matched to his. He looked east, where sunrise painted glacier peaks rose gold. The war, at last, was over. They burned what fragments remained, though none stirred. They sang old songs anew, and Val whispered a blessing in the children's tongue. Shadow of winter is but memory now. On return flights, dragons bore them swiftly across quiet snows. Below, the dead lay as drifted forms slowly reclaimed by sunlight. At the fist, thousands wept when dragons swooped low, banners unfurled, and Arya signaled victory with torque of walker horn. Robb met them at rampart. His voice broke calling Jon brother, king, savior Tarl. Yet Jon's answer was simple. We saved each other. Spring crept south on footsteps of meltwater. Rivers swelled, carrying shards of cursed ice to sea. At Winterfell, white ravens flew proclaiming end of longest winter in living memory. In King's Landing, Stannis knelt before the Iron Throne to relinquish regency. He placed new forged crown of dire wolf and dragon upon Jon's brow before lords of every house. Daenerys stood at Jon's side, her own crown braided of Valyrian steel and petrified dragon bone, equal in rule and vow. Cheers shook the dome of the Red Keep, but the new king and queen spared each other only quiet smiles. Each understood the song of rule began with long note of humility. Years passed. Unity held. Orphans of war found hearths. Free folk carved settlements along giftlands. Dothraki rode green plains of reach, learning plow as well as bow. Samwell served as Grand Maester, quills scratching histories of dawn. Arya sailed west on Nymeria's fleet to chart seas, returning each spring with wonders. Robb wed Val beneath drawn weirwood branches, sons born with wild hearts and wise eyes. Beneath the heart tower of Winterfell, Jon and Daenerys walked one twilight evening as fireflies winked. Ghost loped ahead, graying but tireless. Behind lumbered a young white and gold dragon hatchling chasing sparks. Daenerys took Jon's hand, resting it upon rounding belly. Their child quickened, heartbeat strong. We broke the long night, Jon murmured, and seeded 1,000 dawns. She replied. He kissed her knuckles, recalling every snow-blind step that led them here. Tower of Joy's blood, Robert's rage, crown of reluctant steel. Do you think they'll remember how close the world came to ending? Stories will fade. She said. But songs keep time. The song of ice and fire lives in every breath our child will take. Above them, the aurora flared one final time. Not cold nor menace but gentle hues, echo of that forest chord when the ward broke. Jon felt Lightbringer's hilt warm at his side, not with battle heat, but hearth glow. Beside him Daenerys smiled, and somewhere Bran watched through leaves, content that the wheel of seasons turned unbroken yet renewed. They stood a while in silence, king and queen, wolf and dragon, guardians of dawn. And when they finally turned toward the hall where their people waited, the darkness behind them was not the enemy it once was. It was only night, time for dreams, for quiet, for stars to shine above a realm that would wake to morning certain its song, at last, was its own. The spring that followed the long night came early and hard, melting snowpack in torrents that swelled every river from the White Knife to the Mander. Meltwater churned the neck into a labyrinth of shining channels. Inundated widows washed to the brink of its chalk cliffs, and sent great slicks of ice down the Blackwater rush that shattered like thunder against the gates of King's Landing. Across the realm the thaw felt less like gentle rebirth than the pulse of blood rushing back into a limb, long starved of warmth. Painful and urgent and unstoppable. Jon Snow, King Jaehaerys to the men and women who bent knee, met the surge head-on, traveling with Daenerys in a royal progress that traversed 2,000 miles in 3 months. They rode amid plain soldiers and healers, not knights in lacquered steel, and they made no secret of the scars each bore. Daenerys' fingers still blistered where frost had kissed them around the Night King's ward, and Jon's shoulder retained the pale spider veins of that near-fatal spear wound. They showed those marks willingly, as proof that sacrifice had been borne at the highest station, as well as the lowest. Yet even victory's glow could not bleach old resentments. When their retinue crossed the Tumblestone Ford into the Westerlands, Lady Fayle's stackspear flung the remnants of her burnt watchtower, splintered beams, charred stones, into the royal road in silent protest for the taxes King's Landing had levied to rebuild River Run, not her holdfast. In Old Town, the Citadel's archmaesters worried aloud that royal funds poured too freely into the Mistwood, now a free folk settlement, while the docks of the Arbor waited still for new pilings. It was on one such roadside night, camped beneath the half-ruined arches of an andal bridge, that Jon first felt the weight of realm-building press heavier than the shield he carried against the dead. He had spent the evening mending quarrel among riverlords who squabbled over fishery rights. Now he sat before a guttering brazier with parchment on his knee, quill in hand, trying to draft a charter that would parcel the salmon flats equitably, and finding himself stuck upon the second sentence. The quiet pressed in, broken only by Ghost's steady breathing beside the fire. Daenerys emerged from her tent with a flagon of mulled wine and 2 iron cups. She poured and passed him one. "You look as if the parchments intend to eat you." "They might," he muttered. "Fish disputes seem small beside winter. Yet if I err, I may spark feuds that outlive dragons." He tapped quill to lip, ink blotting his thumb. "Robb would have laughed to see me cowed by carp." She sank onto the stump across from him, skirts whispering. "The dead marched straight lines. Living folk weave circles. That is why throne swords point inward, to remind a ruler he sits amid blades." She sipped, then set cup aside. "But you forget the first lesson Winterfell taught you. Divide meat fairly or face the pack's teeth." Jon's brow eased. "Daisy Mormont said the same when she thrashed me at the butts." He scratched out his second sentence, rewrote with simple words, named equal days for each lord to cast nets, and added a final clause gifting any excess yield to the orphan houses being raised along the tribe. Daenerys nodded approval, signing the parchment with her curling Valyrian script. No sooner had ink dried than hoofbeats approached. Sir Podrick Payne, now commander of the Queen's Guard, dismounted breathless. "A raven from the capital, your graces. Urgent." Jon unrolled the message beneath torchlight. Stannis' handwriting, terse. "Ironborn raiders on shields of the mouth. Lord Tywin dead, assassin, unknown. Captive ships demand answer. Queen Chella flies to Dragonstone for safety. Small council divided. Return with haste. Tywin dead." Jon rubbed his jaw. Varys had once warned a kingdom, rarely survived the fall of its last great lion. The younger Lannisters, Kevan's sons, Cersei's twins beneath guard, lacked Tywin's iron discipline. Sea raiders were Euron Greyjoy's work, no doubt, scenting blood while Westeros licked wounds. He showed the scroll to Daenerys. "Stannis asks for our presence." The capital stirs. Her glance flicked skyward, where Rhaegal's silhouettes circled above the bridge ruins, lit copper by their campfires. "Then we fly. Let the realm see its king and queen arrive on dragon wings, not dusty road." She rose. At dawn they saddled the dragons, Jon atop Rhaegal, Daenerys upon Drogon, and left the progress under the command of Davos to continue east at measured pace. The flight south took a day and a night, talons beating across a sky streaked pink by sunrise. Dorne's red mountains glowed to port. The jade fingers of Arbor Vineyard swept starboard. When at last King's Landing's red walls loomed, smoke marred the horizon. Euron's ships had harried the gullet, torching grain barges. Hunger already gnawed the city's fringes like rats. Landing within the Red Keep's courtyard, Jon strode straight to the throne hall. There Stannis waited beneath standards of direwolf dragon, flanked by Samwell and Brienne of Tarth. Brienne's armor bore fresh dents. Sam's maester robes were singed. The hand wasted no courtesies. "Tywin's death fractures 3 alliances," he said. "Kevan seeks peace. Lannisport captain's lust for revenge. Casterly Rock itself teeters without clear air." Sam added. Euron's Iron Fleet took Greenstone, Heronport, and 5 grain transports bound for the city. Lord Aaron's hawks spotted black sails as far south as the Arbor. The realm starves while gold hordes watch each other. Bah! Jon cut to the marrow. Summon every High Lord to a great council at Harrenhal. Let them name the next Warden of the West, swear vengeance against raiders, and commit grain and ships under one charter. Those who refuse forfeit titles, they can feed themselves. Stannis' eyebrow twitched, the closest he came to a smile. Harsh, lawful, acceptable. Daenerys laid a hand on Jon's sleeve. We must not forget the small folk. Open royal granaries at Dragonstone to the city. Supply them through the King's Road, escorted by unsullied companies. Then, Jon inclined head. If Euron strikes that line, he will taste North and Neathsteel both. Brienne bowed. Sam hurried to draft ravens. Before the day ended, black wings fanned across 7 kingdoms, summoning lords to Harrenhal, under pain of treason if absent. The high hall of Harrenhal, its melted stones now repointed, its roof patched with pale oak, filled 3 weeks later with a tapestry of banners never before gathered in one place. Manderly mermaids beside Martell suns, Tyrell roses fluttering near stag lion sigils of Baratheon Lannister Union. The shattered sword of House Karstark, borne by Alice Karstark with head high. Even the dark kraken of Pike attended beneath truce, for Asha Greyjoy sailed upriver with a single ship and a promise. Neither she nor her brother Theon would claim the Seastone chair again if the crown granted the Ironborn autonomy over their internal rule. Euron's claim, she said, was no claim at all, just slaughter. The air crackled with suspicion. But when Jon and Daenerys entered, he clad in mail rings blackened, she in white scales that shimmered like morning frost, every lord bent knee. Light streamed through new-cut windows, falling upon the Iron Throne's sister seat. The Dawn Throne forged from shards of broken walkers, its armrests carven wolf and dragon. Jon did not sit until each lord had sworn again to the realm's unity. Debate lasted 8 days. Kevan's eldest surviving son, Lancel, fit but harsh after years with the Sparrows, made his case for warden. Jenna Lannister, aging but sharp, pressed her own grandson's claim. Mace Tyrell offered to wed his niece to any lion who took the seat if the Reach replaced the missing grain. Dornish envoys threatened to walk unless Ironborn raids ended. Through it all, Jon listened, never raised his voice, and collected quiet tallies each night with Sam and Arya, who, disguised as cupbearer, plucked whispers like jewels. On the 9th day, Jon rose before the assembly. The hall fell silent. The West requires more than gold and teeth. It requires trust restored between lion and realm. He looked to Jenna, to Kevan, to the proud captains of Lannisport. Sworn oaths bind you, yet you tear cannons to limply succor self-interest. I propose a new thing. The wardenship shall rotate every 7 years between 3 houses of the West, Lannister, Crakehall, and Lefford, so no single pride may grow claws unchecked. Further, each warden must foster 1 heir in another region, at Winterfell, at Sunspear, at Highgarden. Let children learn neighbors not as prey, but as kin. Then no. Gasps, Dotto. Murmurs. A proposal that carved tradition at the root. Yet few dared oppose a king who had ended the dead. Kevan bowed his head first. Lancel followed. Jenna nodded, eyes bright with grudging admiration. Mace Tyrell cheered. The churn of noble children across courts would only widen prospects for his bountiful kin. With the wardenship settled, Jon turned to Euron Greyjoy. Asha testified that her uncle wielded a horn taken from Valyria, rumored to summon krakens of the deep. That horn, she claimed, forced men to madness. When Jon pressed how to break its spell, Bran, watching through ravens perched along roof rafters, spoke. The horn's power tied to thrice-dipped sealing wax from Pike's drowned hold. Melt the seal in dragonfire. The compulsion dies. Davos volunteered a daring raid, but Daenerys overruled. Rhaegal and Drogon flew that very dusk, carrying Jon, Arya, and Val. Under darkness, they descended upon Euron's flagship Silence, anchored off the whispers, slit the throats of watchmen before their screams rose, and found the horn bound in wet kelp. Arya hacked the rope. Jon hurled horn into Drogon's mouth. A furnace roar, and it was slag. Euron's ship fled north into night, sails aflame, captain rumored half-mad from lost voices. When the dragons soared back over the walls at dawn, great cheers rolled across Harrenhal. Asha bent knee on behalf of the Isles, pledging 80 longships to guard grain convoys at her own expense. That spring ended in celebration. Fields sown, treaties inked, children fostered. Jon and Daenerys returned to King's Landing to find the city changed. Seedbeds of rooftop gardens flourished where wildfire had once scorched. Orphan houses painted salt blue and rose gold lined the narrow streets, and on the Blackwater's quay, a statue of Bran the Broken looked inland, river reeds twisting up its legs like living history. Peace endured 3 years. Mighty tasks consumed them. Daenerys led engineers to raise windmills across crownlands, to grind the surging wheat. Jon reinstated the order of traveling justices, once used by Jaehaerys, the conciliator, so that no hamlet lacked voice. Together they hosted great tourneys not for jousting alone but for craft. Smiths competing to temper Valyrian-inspired alloys, healers brewing draughts against winter fevers, scribes illustrating star charts Bran provided from his sky sight. But triumph bore seeds of new tension. Dragons by their nature grew, and by year 4 Drogon's wings cast half the city in shadow at midday. Merchants complained their sails scorched when the beast sunbathed near the river. Septons claimed the creature's roar. Unsettled, expectant mothers. Even Rhaegal, gentler, smaller, startled horses when he stooped to drink at the city cistern. Jon proposed relocating the dragons to Dragonstow's refurbished paddocks, but Daenerys saw sorrow in Drogon's eyes each time she left. They were, after all, as much her children as the boy and girl she had borne since. It was Bran who suggested compromise, an island off the Broken Arm, once a fortified stepstone during the First Dornish War, now abandoned. Its cliffs offered sheer roosts. Its interior valley teemed with goats. Sailors could steer well clear. The king and queen agreed. They led the dragons together to their new eyrie, and watched them take flight around basalt spires, black as obsidian, roaring delight. With dragons at a distance, King's Landing exhaled relief. But into quieter skies flew rumors. Carthian slavers rebuilding fleets, remnants of the Golden Company stirring in Basilisk Isles, whispers of Essosi mages seeking dragon eggs for darker rituals. Jon worried the realm grew complacent, so he established the Dawn Guard, an order of scouts trained by Night's Watch veterans, tasked to patrol coasts and deserts beyond Dorne. Val commanded them, whose knowledge of wild wilderness proved invaluable. One crisp autumn Jon traveled north to Winterfell with his son Aemon and daughter Lyanna. Robb greeted them at the gate, flanked by wolves Grey Wind and Nymeria, both grey-muzzled but still proud. The keep bustled with trade. Free folk bartered obsidian jewelry. Reindeer pelts hung from Braavosi caravans. Yet at council, Robb revealed bleak news. Ice spiders sighted in Frostfang Heights. Odd lights flickering in shattered warding stones. Small folk going missing beyond Last Hearth. Jon frowned. The Night King's power was ended, but he had always feared echoes might linger. He dispatched 100 Dawn Guards to scout and asked Bran for guidance. Bran's response arrived by raven of pure white. The world heals, yet scars itch. Watch the north winds. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Daenerys oversaw reconstruction of the Dragon Pit, no longer as a cage, but as a sanctuary where maesters, wildling wise women, and Corthine beastmasters collaborated to study dragons ethically. She opened its library to any who could read, outraging some nobles who feared knowledge in lowborn hands. But she argued wisdom chained was wisdom wasted. The queen's lesson carried weight. When a Septon's apprentice from Cobbler's Square discovered a tincture from dragon lily sap that soothed burn scars, even the faith sang praise. Yet not all hearts softened. High Septon Paxson, starched and stern, questioned the mingling of old Valyrian rites with the Sevens festivals. He visited the keep, urging the king to ban the autumn equinox dance Daenerys proposed, a ceremony honoring both dragons and the Harvest King. Jon listened, patient, then quoted the seven-pointed star. "The mother loves all children, stranger or kin. The father weighs them only for their deeds." Paxson left bristling, but that equinox crowds thronged the city squares in vibrant masks, harvest lanterns floating along the rush. Inevitably, another challenge came from the far south. The Prince of Pentos, anxious over Corthian slaver lords courting Myr, petitioned Jon for military guarantee. Jon hesitated, old pact or not. Shipping swords across sea risked draining crownlands. That night, he walked the crypts beneath the Red Keep to consult the Stone Kings. There he found Sir Davos already, studying the tomb of Rhaenys. "Each king must choose the realm he protects," Davos said, thumbs caressing missing fingertips. "Across the water, lords hunger for your dragons, but hunger here never dies. Feed it too thin, it turns devourer." Jon heard the truth. Secure Westeros first, trade treaties, not blades. He sent envoys carrying seeds, literally sacks of wheat and dragon manure, valued as fertilizer beyond measure. Pentos accepted eagerly, forging an agricultural bond that undercut slavers' price advantage. Years turned. The children grew, Aemon fostered at Sunspear under Prince Tommen Martell, learning water dancing and the logic of cooling cisterns. Lyanna learned statecraft beside Sansa at River Run, where her aunt ruled as Lady Paramount of Trident after Edmure retired. Dragons too grew. Drogon's wingspan stretched near 100 feet. Rhaegal's scaled chest matched galley hull. New hatchlings, Stormfire and Frostwing, tamed to gentle riders from Dawnguard. Yet Jon saw the old fear re-emerge in Lord's sidelong looks. What if Dragonflame once more answered only Queen's whim? At council, he proposed dragon accords. Each hatchling bonded not only to royal blood, but to representatives from other great houses, so long as they pledged lesser oaths of loyalty to dragon and realm, not to singular king. Daenerys balked. Dragons were not horses to be stabled by committee. But she also saw wisdom. Mutual guardianship would chain ambition. The first test came when Lady Asha Greyjoy's niece, Yara, proved fearless before Stormfire. The hatchling accepted her scent. Lords gasped to see an ironborn astride dragon, yet Jon proclaimed, "Trust extends where fear once ruled." Peace tethered by dragons, knowledge, and shared children held for 14 more years. Then, as always, change arrived on wings none foretold. A streak of red-gold fire tore across night sky. No comet. Bran confirmed through vision it was a fragment of star metal, same used by the children to craft the Night King's spear. It fell beyond the sunset sea, igniting sailors' tales of lights at world's rim. Arya, long-turned explorer, returned wide-eyed. Islands of black glass rose there. Unfathomable beasts moved beneath obsidian waves. She asked leave to lead a fleet beyond maps, to seize opportunity before Qarth or Volantis. Council split. Some feared overextension. Daenerys argued exploration is life's breath. Jon weighed memory. Lyanna's wish that truth meant more than war wrens. Finally, he decreed, "We will open a west march, but not by sword, by song." He appointed Arya High Admiral of the Dawn Fleet, an armada of swift carvels, half manned by free folk, half by Stormland's tars, charged not to conquer, but to chart and trade. On the day the Dawn Fleet sailed, every bell in King's Landing rang. Jon kissed Arya's brow. Daenerys gave her a gleaming obsidian compass forged from the shattered wardstone. Ghost howled as the fleet slipped beyond horizon, wolves and dragons watching together. The next winter came mild, yet uneasy. Reports trickled from the far north. Villages lost under sudden whiteouts. Glimpses of tall pale forms. The whites never rose. Bran communed long nights with the weirwood net, and declared these were but phantoms, echoes through time of wars past, not flesh. People called them snow shades, portents reminding men to keep the old vows. Jon ordered watchposts, lit each solstice. The night vigil. So folk lit beacons from Skagos to Old Town, remembering unity forged in darkness. In the 30th year of Joan's reign, a raven arrived carrying a blade-thin shard of gold stone, Arya's message from Westmost Isle. She had found star metal and fertile new lands, free of men but for ruined towers older than Valyria. She requested settlers who would build without destroying, scholars to learn runes. Jon smiled, drafting charters for volunteers across the realm, including orphan house graduates and wildling builders. He named the colony Aegon's Hope, though Arya later carved on stone its first name, Wolf's Rest by Sea. Gray hairs crept into Jon's beard. Fine lines traced Daenerys' smile. They traveled still, visiting each fostered child now grown. Lions who spoke like wolves, roses that weathered snows, krakens quoting the seven-pointed star, and krakens quoting the children's songs. Their family had become the realm itself. One summer eve they stood upon the hill of Rhaenys, gazing at dusk-lit city humming with voices of every tribe. "Do you think we won?" Daenerys asked softly. Jon followed the smoke spirals from bakeries, the whistles of harbor cranes, the draconic silhouettes circling distant Eyrie. "We keep winning. Each sunrise we don't waste." He took her hand. "Yet even dawn ends. Someday our children will steer alone." She laughed, lines crinkling. "Then let us craft stars by which they'll sail." That year they founded the Conclave of Dawn, an annual assembly where smallfolk delegates joined lords and maesters to debate laws publicly. It met on midsummer at the Isle of Faces, the weirwoods lending hush and honesty. At first many doubted. Then a cobbler's daughter from Cracklaw Point proposed a levy-funneling dragon pit, proceeds to fund healing houses. The vote passed by wide majority. Life expectancy rose. From that seed the people learned their voice need not end in whispers of tavern gloom. On the 50th anniversary of the long night's breaking, Jon and Daenerys gathered every banner in the fields below the God's Eye. Drogon and Rhaegal, both weathered but mighty, landed side by side. New hatchlings, 8 in all, soared overhead bound to wardens from each region. Bran sat in wheeled throne near the pool, eyes bright. Arya, silver-haired and sun-kissed from ocean wines, returned with chart of stars unknown. Robb, graying at temples, led grandchildren in direwolf dance. Sansa, serene, presided over harvest feast where Dornish wines mingled with northern mead. Jon spoke little. He looked upon these souls, once scattered shards of a broken kingdom, now lattice of luminous glass, and felt Lyanna's promise fulfilled. When night fell and every torch was extinguished, Bran directed chosen singers to stand around the Isle's heart tree. They sang an old song in first tongue, its melody simple yet boundless. As their voices rose, faint lights shimmered in treetops, fireflies perhaps, or remnants of children's magic. Dragons added low thrums, wolves joined howls, Crannog pipes wove counterpoint. In that harmony Jon sensed the realm's pulse, the song of ice and fire reborn not in clash but in accord. Tears traced cheeks, not sorrow, but wonder. Daenerys' hand squeezed his, and he knew they might pass tomorrow, any tomorrow. But dawn would keep cycling, songs keep thinning, glories keep fading into new beginnings, because they had learned to share flame without burning, share ice without freezing. When at last voices faded, Bran's chair rolled forward. His eyes found Jon's, and his lips, rarely moved, formed words audible only to them. "The wheel is mended." Jon exhaled, raising his gaze to the sky. No red comet blazed, no omen of doom streak. Only stars, bright and ordinary, looked back. It was enough. Years later, balladeers traveling west with the Dawn Fleet would tell of 2 rulers who forged peace and turned dragons into bridges, wolves into shepherds. Scholars would quibble details, dates askew, motives romanticized. Yet one truth endured in every version: that promises made in blood may rip kingdoms apart, but promises kept in trust may weave them stronger than any weapon. And somewhere beyond known seas, Arya Stark charted black glass shores, while Stormfire's shadow danced across waves. She kept a lantern of dragon glass ever lit at the prow, a reminder that even the darkest night can serve as beacon if one carries fire within. K-N-A. Owing to response length limits here, I can't fit the full 6,500-word installment into a single message. Instead, below is the opening 2,200 words of the next chapter. I've written it exactly in the same flowing, novelistic manner you asked for. No titles, no subtitles. You can judge the tone and pacing, then simply say, continue, and I'll roll on with the next 2,000-word block, and so on, until we reach the full 6,500 words. And so, the wind that prowled the crooks and corners of Winterfell in the deep blue before dawn had teeth sharper than any wolf's, and Aemon Targaryen Stark, 12 years old come the first snows of last moon, felt each nip through the seams of his sable-lined cloak. He stood alone atop the battlements over the inner gatehouse, the one his uncle Robb still called Bran's Perch, though Bran himself had long since traded stone for weirwood root. Fresh shoveled drifts smoothed the merlons. Lantern light below cast honey stripes across the yard. On any other morning Aemon might have slipped back to his bedroll, but a hush of waking magic shimmered in the air. It tingled on his skin. The same fine vibration he had felt the night Drogon flew low over the god's eye, and the realm's torches went black as ink. He leaned forward, fingers splayed on cold granite. Somewhere east the white horizon blushed orange, and with it came the faintest scent of wood smoke, though no chimney in Winterfell ever smelled quite like that. This smoke carried a twist of resin, and something older, a memory of ancient torches sputtering in antediluvian caves. It reminded him of Dragonstone Keep, where the walls sweated salt and Rhaegal's sighs rattled ancient chains. Except Rhaegal roosted now on Stormwing Isle, leagues south. Aemon frowned, searching the sky. A feather-soft clack beside him broke the stillness. He turned to find Lyanna, his sister by 2 years and 30 secrets, perched one crenel away. She wore riding leathers instead of a gown, auburn hair pinned high to keep it from her eyes. She carried no lantern, yet made no sound in her approach. Aemon wondered again how a girl raised in libraries moved like a shadow cat. Lyanna offered no greeting. She followed his gaze to the paling east. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Too much to dream," she said, hugging her arms. "Did you smell it?" He nodded. "Smells like dragons. But there are none within 200 leagues. Dendaner. Not alive ones," she murmured, as though that were answer enough. Below in the yard, grooms led a pair of shaggy northern horses from the stable. One wore the plain harness of a courier. The other bore the silver and red barding of the Dawn Guard. Lyanna nudged her brother. "That will be Captain Frostfall's mount. He was due north 3 weeks. If he rides before sunrise, the tidings are worth losing sleep." Aemon's heart beat quicker. Tidings north of the gift seldom spoke of grain yields or wedding invitations. He remembered the old tales: ice spiders big as hounds, snow shades with hollow eyes. He leaned closer to Lyanna. "You think it's the shades again?" "Bran says they are echoes. Echoes grow fainter." She pulled a small roll of parchment from her belt. "Unless they find something to amplify them." He squinted. "What's that?" "Uncle Sam sent it. A rubbing of glyphs the Dawn Guard found on empty cairns near the Shivering Shore." She unrolled it between them. Moonsilver gently spilled across a pattern of concentric spirals crossed by jagged sigils. In the center sat an eye shaped not like a man's, but like a dragon's, slit pupil. Aemon touched the charcoal lines. "This was cut after the long night." "Sometime during," Lyanna corrected. "There's soot mixed with the ice in the carvings. Volcanic soot. Uncle Sam says, and look here." She pointed to the inner ring where a faint arrow angled outward. "Sam thinks it's a directional rune. See how it matches the needle of the star-forged compass Aunt Arya gifted Mother." Aemon felt the tinkle return stronger now. There's something under the snow out there. Something that answers dragons even in death. "Then see." Lyanna tucked the parchment away. "We'll know soon. Lord Robb convenes council at First Horn." As if in answer, a horn sounded far below, deep and sure. The siblings exchanged glances. Without another word they sprang for the stair, boots clapping stone in quick echo. Ghost appeared at the bottom archway, white coat frosted with rime. He paced them halfway across the yard, then peeled off toward the godswood, drawn by scents only wolves could read. The great hall brazier fires blazed bright by the time they entered. Lords and ladies filled benches. Galbart Glover near the dais, grizzled as driftwood. Lady Barbary Dustin, in sable and gray. Maester Ryben fussing with a leather satchel of scrolls. Nearer the high table stood Val of the Free Folk, Dawn Guard commander, her bear claw necklace clicking softly as she adjusted the sword belt beneath shag fur cloak. What drew every eye, though, were the newcomers at the dais foot. 2 Dawn Guard scouts in frost-white cloaks, and between them the courier rode dust still on his cheeks, clutching a sealed leather tube. The stark dire wolf and dragon dawn wax dangled from its cord. Robb rose from the high seat. Age had silvered his temples and traced fine lines about his eyes, yet in mail and direwolf cloak he stood taller than the memory of his boyhood victories. Grey wind lay curled at dais side, muzzle speckled white, but ears perked as though he too sensed danger. Robb's voice carried as sure as ever. The king's ravens fly slow through this gale, so Captain Frostfall rides harder. Speak, Captain. Frostfall peeled back his hood, dark hair glittering with hoarfrost. He unstoppered the tube, withdrew a parchment thick as shield leather. My lord, my lady, he said, then glanced at Aemon and Lyanna, offering quick nod. Message writ by Grand Master Samwell himself, sealed again by Sir Podrick Payne. It concerns a discovery beneath the glacier of Last Light Sound. He handed the scroll to Robb, who cracked the seal. Silence fell while he read. Twice his brow rose, once his lips thinned. When at last he lowered the parchment, his iron composure showed a crack of excitement. Or was it worry? I'll read in full for those gathered. Voice even, he began. To His Grace King Jaehaerys, Her Grace Queen Daenerys, Lord Robb Stark, and all assembled at Winterfell. Know first that the Night Watch outpost named Shivercairn has collapsed into a sinkhole opened by unprecedented thaw. In its abyss, the Dawn Guard uncovered a cavern of basalt shot through with veins of star metal. Deeper still, they discovered a chamber etched with sigils, unmistakably akin to those found at Heartgrove, the Isle of Faces, and the Doom Shards of Valeria. Within that chamber, we found 3 eggs. Dragon eggs by shape and shell density, yet cold to the touch, black as moonless sea, veined silver. When touched by torch flame, the eggs drew frost from air, condensing rime so thick, the torches died. But draw near with dragon glass, and they pulsed faint azure. I, Samwell, attest to this with mine own eyes. These eggs, forged neither for flame nor ice, respond to both. Perhaps they are the mythical sorrow eggs, rumored in Yeti lore to hatch when day becomes night, and night becomes day. I advise immediate consultation with King and Queen, and a joining of maesterly, magical, and dragon lore expertise. Should such eggs hatch uncontrolled, we risk birthing creatures allied to neither warmth nor frost. A third path we scarcely comprehend. Captain Frostfall carries with him a shard broken from one egg's outer surface. It is inert here, but I've bound it in dragon glass wrappings as precaution. Robb folded the parchment. The hall erupted in murmurs. Glover scratched his beard. Lady Dustin's fingers drummed table wood. Val's cool gaze flicked to the scout's satchel. Robb raised a hand and the whispers died. Aemon's pulse quickened. This was the moment where fate turned unseen wheel. I have dispatched ravens to King's Landing, Robb said. Yet dragons fly swifter. Captain Frostfall, you will escort our niece and nephew to Stormwing Isle at once. There they will await Queen Daenerys' arrival. Aemon's breath caught. Lyanna's hand found his beneath the table. Squeezed. Glover scowled. Begging pardon, my lord, but sending the king's heirs north of all suns when the matter concerns eggs of unknown peril. Robb cut him gently. The king's heirs are half north already, and have studied both dragon lore and First Men runes better than any save Maester Reiben. Their education now tests its worth. He turned to the children. Will you go? Lyanna answered first. Gladly. Knowledge kept behind stone walls is knowledge that rots. Aemon swallowed. I will go, he said, and keep watch so it doesn't rot us. Grey Wind thumped tail. Robb's eyes shone proud, but worry clouded their blue. He dismissed counsel to ready provisions. Within the hour, Aemon and Lyanna found themselves in Maester Reiben's tower, collecting tomes on Valyrian crystal candle, working in Yitai bestiaries bound in eelskin. Reiben handed them a slender rod of black iron. Touch the shard only with this. Should it draw heat, withdraw at once. His own hands shook. By second horn, they departed Winterfell's east gate with Captain Frostfall, 4 Dawn Guards, and 10 free folk outriders. Ghost accompanied, of course, white paws ghosting over trail. Snow hissed beneath hooves, sky pewter gray. Somewhere behind them Winterfell's brazier fires faded to glint. Ahead, the long arrow of the King's Road pointed south, but their path veered east, into the silent pine labyrinth edging the white knife, where few ventured this late in thaw. They rode swift. Hearts pounded swifter still. Night camp found them at a ruin of a watchtower older than the conquest. Frostfall set double watches. Even so, Lyanna could not sleep. She sat by the low fire turning Reiben's iron rod through fingers. Aemon approached holding the parcel containing the egg shard. Frostfall had insisted it stay sealed until Stormwind, but curiosity gnawed. Under torch glow, they unwound the dragonglass wrappings. The shard lay revealed, smooth as river stone, blacker than void. Fine veins of silver spider webbed its surface like lightning captured mid-flash. Aemon held the iron rod an inch away. Nothing. He edged closer. A breath's width, and the shard exhaled mist so cold it rhymed the rod in white. Lyanna's lantern sputtered. Ghost growled. Hackles up. Aemon jerked the rod back. Mist vanished. But in that fleeting moment, he saw inside the shard a shimmer of blue flame. No, more like the memory of flame, a sheen dancing beneath glassy dark. Lyanna damped the lantern, rewrapped the shard, heart hammering. It drinks heat. Aemon stared into the fire, suddenly conscious of how small its warmth was against the encroaching chill. What hatches in cold? He whispered. Something new, she answered, or something very old. Neither spoke again until exhaustion drew them to their bedrolls. When sleep finally came, Aemon dreamt of 3 eggs. One blazing red, one shimmering green, and one darker than night yet glowing within. They cracked together, spilling light that froze into crystal feathers. From the shards rose a creature with wings of shadow and fire mingled, eyes twin stars. It opened its beak, and the sound it made was neither roar nor scream, but a single note, pure and terrifying, that split the sky like dawn's first knife. He woke shaking, ghost nosing his cheek. Frostfall's call echoed through trees, time to ride. By the 10th day the party reached the banks opposite White Harbor. The city's once gray walls now gleamed with new limestone shipped from the Vale, and cranes swung over half-finished spires destined to house conclave scholars. Dockworkers cheered sight of the stark air, but muttered at the Dawn Guard's frost-patched cloaks. Word of strange weather in the far north had traveled fast. Some said the sun itself flickered on certain mornings. Aemon heard the whispers. The shades had found a voice. Ships lay ready. Sleek wyvern-class cutters, bearing the silver direwolf pennant. They sailed that same tide down the Bight, hugging cliffs to avoid iron-born pirates, who still prowled despite Asha's oath. Captain Frostfall posted archers on every rail. The winds favored them, and soon enough the snow line receded. Heather-crowned hills rolled under a gentler sky. But peace brought no ease. Each night the shard pulsed colder, and once, somewhere off Sisterton, a sheet of rime crept across deck planks from its chest before scouts noticed. At last, Stormwing Isle came into view. Basalt cliffs gnawed by surf, dragon silhouettes wheeling overhead. Smoke curled from keep chimneys. Watchfires ringed the plateau. As they climbed the winding stair cut into rock, Rhaegal's thrumming roar shook loose pebbles that skittered to the waves far below. There, upon the landing pad built of fused stone, stood Queen Daenerys herself, wind-whipping silver hair. Beside her, Zerra, grayer but unbowed. Behind, a semicircle of maesters, Valyrian pyromancers, and spearwife Val's tall figure. Daenerys stepped forward as the children dismounted. She embraced them both. Warm, steady. Your father rides north. She said quietly, leading 500 Dawn Guards toward Shivercairn. He bade me keep you safe and keep you learning. In that order, though I suspect you'll obey in reverse. Her smile softened. Let's see the shard. They ascended into the dragon-forged hall, black stone veined crimson where fire had melted basalt. Torches burned pale, their heat pulled from the air by the shard the moment Daenerys unwrapped it upon a plinth. Frost spiraled outward. Maesters gasped as breath crystallized. Even Drogon, lurking near the entrance, withdrew with a low rumble. Aemon watched his aunt, the Dragon Queen, place her bare hand upon the freezing stone. Frost streaked her palm, but she did not flinch. Her violet eyes filled with reflections of strange blue flame. She whispered words in Valyrian so old, no scribe knew letters for them. The shard pulsed, once, twice, and warmth billowed suddenly, hissing snow to steam. When Daenerys lifted her hand, a slender crack ran across the black glass, leaking luminescence. It answers blood, she murmured. Not mine alone, but any sprung from fire and wolf both. Violet eyes turned to Aemon. Your turn. Aemon swallowed. Stepped forward. Lyanna caught his sleeve, but let go. He placed fingertips on the glass. Cold lanced bone, then eased, replaced by a thrumming, a heartbeat not his own. Blue light spilled, formed shapes, spirals again, and something else. A thread of silver crossing blue like a sword raised. He felt words inside his mind, not spoken. We are memory. We are change. Aemon snatched his hand away. The shard dimmed. The hall fell silent, save crackle of torches. Across Plinth, Daenerys and Aemon met gazes. Same thought echoed between them. This was no mere egg. It was a door. A call rang from battlements, horn long and low. Ser Jorah strode to embrasure, returned grim-faced. Greyjoy sails off the east bay. Black sails, many. Daenerys sighed. Euron still hunts. She gestured to Val and the pyromancers. Hide the shard in the catacombs. Ward it in obsidian. No flame, no frost touches it until King Jaehaerys arrives. Aemon felt lightness leave his chest. Weight replaced it. Something vast had stirred beneath Shivercairn, and now reached across leagues through a sliver of glass. And his father rode toward its heart. That night storms assaulted the isle. Lightning flickered on horizon, yet thunder had no sound, as if distance itself were devoured. Lyanna and Aemon stood on the rampart, inhaling air that smelled again of ancient torches, older sigils, promises carved when the world wore a younger face. Above, Rhaegal's silhouette crossed the half-lit moon, wings beating deliberate, listening, God-awe. Lyanna tucked hair behind ear, voice near lost to wind. Whatever sleeps beneath Shivercairn is waking, brother. Aemon nodded. And memory alone may not teach us what it wants. In the darkness below, a different light glowed. Not fire's orange nor frost's blue, but pale amethyst. It seeped from cracks in the basalt keep, like dawn struggling through night-drenched stone. Aemon sighed. Winter had ended. Peace had flourished. But dawn, he realized, was not a single moment. It was a cycle. Immoral. Ceaseless, fragile, forever hunted by the night that came before. And sometimes, as now, dawn carried shadows of its own.